Very good evening, friends. So today we'll be starting with this Indian physical geography. The last few classes we have just covered this world physical geography. So today, as I said, we'll be discussing about this Indian physical geography, right? And before getting into it, as a matter of reminder, 21st May, we have a marathon session that is conducted on current affairs. So kindly take this opportunity to attend this class and it will be useful. I believe so, right? All that current affairs, important events that has happened in the last 1 year will be discussed potentially. So, right, my dear friends, with that, talking about today's topics, class topics, what exactly we'll be discussing? We'll be discussing about the physiographic divisions of India, right? When I talk about the physiographic divisions of India, see, for example, this entire physiographic divisions of India can be divided into 6 major physiographic divisions according to NCERT. But here I have just given us 5. Say, for example, you can call it as 4, you can call it as 5, you call it as 6. That is not going to make any difference as such. Only thing is that I know that what are the major landform features in the world. If you remember my difference, what are the major landforms features in the world? One I call them as what? Plateau. Two I call them as what? Mountains. Three I call them as what? Plains. And four I call them as what? Islands. So here again, there is no, say for example, much difference between our classification. Again, what I am bringing here is what? Plateau. Again, what? Say for example, mountain. Then comes plains. Then comes islands. Okay. So forget about the names. The major landforms, what we have taken globally, we are going to talk about the same landforms when it comes to Indian physical geography as such. Then you may wonder, where about desert, right? What about desert? For example, NCRT talked about desert. You have not talked about desert, my dear friends. Within the scope of northern plains, I'll be covering this desert also. Because see, desert I should understand. Desert you call them as what? Arid plains. You call them as what? Arid plains. Arid plains means dry plains. You call them as what? Arid plains, my dear friends. So whichever place, say for example, experience less than say for example 50 centimeters of precipitation, right? Annual precipitation, you call them as what? Desert. You call them as desert. Okay, right. So what are the likely topics we'll be covering in today's class? I have just given you a hint. Okay, now my dear friends, entire physiographic or entire Indian physical geography, only 3 broad topics are there. Among them, the most, say for example, the largest one, what will take major chunk of your time and energy, of course, is physiographic divisions. And of course, physiographic divisions is very, very important for the examination per se. Then drainage and Indian climate will be covering in tomorrow's class. Okay. So entire India, my dear friends, we are going to divide into different landform features. That's it. Okay. Right. Plateau, mountains, plains and islands. For example, what you see here in the central part of India largely comprises of that plateau. Right. On the other hand, my dear friends, Himalayas, right? Whatever I am just taking the name of Himalayas, you call them as what? Northern mountain walls makes you that of more of mountains. Then say for example, light green shaded region, what you can see everywhere, makes that part of, say for example, this plains of India. And of course, we do have islands, right? What exactly is an island? We have an idea. Right, my dear friends, one by one, if I'm just talking about. So first, I'll just start with the plateau of India. Plateau of India, where all I have this plateau of India. See, as I already said, the major physiographic divisions, you can divide them into plateau, northern mountain wall, that is mountain, plains of India, that is northern and coastal plains, both I'm including in plains of India. Then comes what? Island. Okay, so one by one, I have to take it and I have to discuss in detail. Okay. Now, my dear friends, first comes what? Plateau. And one more thing, let me also tell you, see, this classification, the arrangement, what I'm just somewhere, I'm just arranging it. All right, this, you find a sequence, right? This sequence is also chronological sequence. Why I say it is more of chronological sequence? For the simple reason, my dear friends. This plateau of India majorly belongs to Azoic. And for all practical purpose, we also include this Paleozoic features. Northern mountain wall belongs to Cenozoic era. Plains of India and islands put together, they belong to what? Neozoic era. Or I can say for example, plateau of India belongs to Azoic and primary period. When I talk about Mesozoic era, there is no major landforms. It had its formation in Mesozoic era, but we do have an exception. We have in the name of Deccan Trap. But Deccan Trap is regarded as a modification of what? Deccan Plateau, right? It means we do not classify Deccan Trap as a separate landform feature as such. A lava plateau called as Deccan Trap. Okay, so this is also chronological in sequence, my difference. It means all this plateau of India either they belong to oldest structure or they belong to old structure. Northern mountain wall, that is Himalayas, belong to young structures, and plains of India and islands they belong to what? Youngest features, right? Somewhere chronologically also I am just arranging it. Okay. So having said this, my difference, one by one we have to take it. As I said, we'll try to discuss in detail. Okay. First, plateau of India. See, this classification is just for our, say, for example, right? Maybe the ease of classification, or just for our own understanding, we are just going for such classification. Only thing is that somewhere, if I'm just putting in an orderly fashion, it is easy to remember, right? That's the reason why exactly somewhere we are just hoping to somewhere put it in this fashion, right, my friends? Now, when I talk about plateau of India, this plateau of India, we can divide them, classify them as peninsular plateaus and central highlands. See, when talk about mountains like Aravali, Vindhyan, Satpura, and Satmala, I know, for example, Aravali, if I just take it my difference, I know the fact that Aravali is more an example of old fold mountain. Now you may wonder, what is this? Aravali is an example of old fold mountain. Then why are you classifying under this head called as plateau of India, if you ask me? Very simple. We are not worried about, or we are not concerned about the past height of Aravali. We strongly believe that this Aravali as a mountain once stood at a mighty height of 10,000 meters, right? Mightier than the present day Himalayas. Today, Himalaya stands only at what? Somewhere around 6,000 meters, Himalayas. I'm talking about the average height. Kindly don't tell me, well, means Himalayas is 8848. 8848 is Mount Everest, not Himalayas. Mount Everest is one exceptional part of Himalayas. So average height of Himalayas, if I take it, is only 6,000 meters. So this mountain, my dear friends, this mountain Aravali, somewhere we strongly believe that it would have somewhere, right? This was standing or it stood at a mightier height than that of what? Himalayas. But today, what is the present height of Aravali, if you ask me? Today, only 600 meters. So the classification, I'm just going with today's classification, not with the past classification as such. Okay, right. Right, my dear friends. Now, somewhere, I'm just dividing them into peninsular plateau and central highlands. Simple. And about peninsular plateau, my dear friends, all that plateau sections, what we have, say for example, somewhere if I'm just taking it, all that plateaus, what I have in the peninsular part of India, I call them as what? Peninsular plateau for all practical reasons. That extension of this plateau in northeastern states. See, for example, even West Bengal and Bangladesh also, I understand. Say, for example, this is an extension of the plateau. But somewhere only thing is that you had a fault called as Malda fault. So Malda fault is the one which separates this, say for example, the larger peninsular plateau and the northeastern plateau. Or what you call them as what? Far eastern tableland. Okay. So somewhere I can take it as an extension, and here again the Gujarat plateaus also I can take it as an extension. This is what I call them as what? Peninsular plateau. Then say for example, all this old features, old fold mountains like Araval, old block mountains like Vindhyan, Satpura, and Satmala, for all practical reason, we are taking it as what? Central highlands, right? And my dear friends, if I use this word called as highland, highland is the other word what we use it to substitute or somewhere mention or refer what? Plateaus, my dear friends. Okay, this is what the larger idea is all about. Okay, now when I talk about this peninsular plateau, my difference, this peninsular plateau belongs to Azoic era. It means these are the features which actually belongs to that oldest structure. Right? Deccan Plateau, we say oldest structure, one of the oldest rock, what we have in the right Indian landscape, not only in India. All these features, my dear friends, this is one of the first landform features that had its development during this Azoic era. The entire Earth, when I talk about entire Earth, when proto-Earth started solidifying, the first formed landforms, very popularly we call them as what? Shield. We call them as a shield. This is the first landform which had its formation in the world. See, this shield was highly modified today. During Azoic era, somewhere when I talk about Azoic, every time you're using this word, what is Azoic, right? When exactly is the period? It is somewhere around 4,600 million years ago to 600 million years ago. Okay, this is the period of this Azoic era. All these features, what I'm mentioning here, they had its formation during what? Azoic era. This is the first landform which had its formation. How? Solidification of this magma. Proto-Earth was more like a ball of magma. Slowly, steadily, it started solidifying. The outer structure formed, you call them as lithosphere. What lies in the outer surface of lithosphere, you call them as what? Shield. Okay? Right, my dear friends. Having said this, all these features, they are oldest feature. Whereas when I talk about central highlands, they belong to what? The old features. And my dear friends, see here, again, for just for understanding, right, our own convenience, this peninsular plateau, I am further subclassifying them into interior plateaus and ghats. This for our convenience. See, ghats do not have any, I'll put it right, there is no defined, right, or say, for example, a perfect definition for a ghat. Somewhere I can say the boundary of the plateau, I can call them as a ghat. Even sometimes the boundary of a river banks also, or the river banks also, you call them as what? Ghat. So ghat is more like a boundary. Boundary of this plateau, you call them as what? Ghat. So one in the west, you call it as Western Ghats, and one in the east, you call them as what? Eastern Ghats. Right? And when it comes to interior plateaus, my difference, I have the largest plateau in India called as Deccan Plateau, and one of the most exploited plateau in India called as Chotanagpur Plateau, very rich in metalliferous minerals. And all the plateaus which is located in northeastern states, you call them as what? Far Eastern Tableland, or you call them as what? Shillong Plateau, or you call them as what? Himalayan Plateau. Then say, for example, the central part of India, we have this Malwa and Bundelkhand, and the westernmost plateau in India, we have in the name of what? Kathiawar Tableland. So these are some of the plateaus, my friends. And the boundaries of the plateau, you call them as what? Ghats, Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats. For examination, what is more important, I'll tell you. Western Ghats is more important than Aravalli as a mountain is also very, very important. So one by one, we'll just take it, we'll discuss it, right? Quickly we'll discuss about the same. Right? When I talk about Western Ghats, my dear friends, Western Ghats. Normally, Western Ghats extends from River Tapi to Kanyakumari. Once they have asked a question, they have given a statement. 2017, they have given a statement. Right? Western Ghats is spread over 5 states only. That time we have marked wrong because we know the fact that Western Ghats is spreading over 6 states. All the Indian states which has a coastline with the Arabian Sea, these are the states where exactly I have the presence of Western Ghats. Now, immediately you may wonder, what is this? When I talk about, say, for example, Arabian Sea coastline, Gujarat, I'm okay, Maharashtra, I'm okay, Goa, I'm okay, Karnataka also, I'm okay, Kerala, I'm very much sure. But what about Tamil Nadu? Does Tamil Nadu has a coastline with Arabian Sea, if you ask me? Answer is yes. Kanyakumari is called as Triveni Sangam. Kanyakumari is the place where 3 water bodies mix with each other. What are the 3 water bodies? Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, and Arabian Sea. It means substantial part of Tamil Nadu is also there, which has a coastline with what? Arabian Sea. Okay. See, these are small nuances what we may miss in our day-to-day observation. Tamil Nadu also has a small coast. If somebody is asking how many Indian state is having a coastline with Arabian Sea, it is not 5, it is 6. Okay. So these are the states which is also having the presence of what? Western Ghats. But 2017, why exactly that question was asked? Because that was the time when one say for example, environmental report was published regarding this Western Ghats. That's the reason Western Ghats was given more emphasis as such. Okay, now, so the basic facts, my friends. Where to where it extends, I already told, River Tapi in Gujarat to Kanyakumari in Tamil Nadu. What is the average height, my friends? The average height of this mountain is somewhere around 1,300 meters. 1,300 meters here. Peninsular part of India will go for only for, say for example, 2 classification. Either we'll be saying, say for example, it is tall mountains or short mountains. The tall mountains, I am just taking it as 1,500. Not necessarily always it is 1,500. Short heighted mountain, I'll mark it as 600 meters. Just for our convenience again. Because see, always remember, my friends, precise information and all, it is not needed. I always believe that competitive examination is all about approximation. Ruthlessly being precise and all, it will not work here. Approximately, try to remember it, more than enough. Right. Now, when I talk about Western Ghats, my dear friends, Western Ghats is not one mountain, right? Series of mountains are part and parcel of Western Ghats. Series of mountains are there. Now, what are the mountains which is part and parcel of Western Ghats, if you ask me, right? For example, if you're there in Maharashtra, you find Harishchandra range and Balaghat range. And one small correction, in your atlas, if you refer it, right, Balaghat will be slightly north and Harishchandra will be slightly south. But atlas to atlas, right? Say, for example, the representation changes. So Harishchandra and Balaghat range, they are more part of Maharashtra. Whereas if you are there in Karnataka, my dear friends, you find one very important mountain, Baba Budan Hills. This is the mountain from where, or the mountain where the first time the coffee plantation was somewhere, say for example, almost planted. By Baba Budan, he himself has planted this coffee plantation in Baba Budan Hills. That's the reason this mountain itself, today we call them as what? Baba Budan Hills. Right. Now, and just south of it, you have a very important mountain, Nilgiri, Blue Mountains. Okay. Exactly at the tri-junction of the three states, Karnataka one side, Tamil Nadu on another side, Kerala on another side, kind of a tri-junction, Nilgiri, my difference. And south of Nilgiri, you have Anamalai, and further south of Anamalai, you have this Cardamoms, right? So all these are part and parcel of Western Ghats, right? The name of these mountains are very, very important. I repeat again, Harishchandra and Balaghat range of Maharashtra, Baba Budan Hills of Karnataka, Nilgiri, a kind of a tri-junction between three states, but still the larger presence of Nilgiri is there in what? Tamil Nadu. You have heard about the places, hill stations like Ooty, Kunnur, am I right? All these places are located in what? Nilgiri, right? And even say, for example, Anamalai and Cardamom hills are also part of what? Western Ghats. Right, my friends. Having said this, now talking about some of the very important aspects, my friends, particularly when I talk about the peaks of Western Ghats, peaks. Anaimudi, Kerala, is considered to be the highest peak of Western Ghats. Not only highest peak of Western Ghats, my friends. I would say that Anaimudi is the highest peak in entire India outside Himalayas. Outside Himalayas. When I say outside Himalayas, say for example, assume that okay, I'm not taking this Himalayan consideration, right? Leaving Himalayas, the rest of India, if I just take it, among all the mountains, what I have the highest peak is what? Anaimudi. It is there, part and parcel of this mountain called as Anamalai. Anamalai is the mountain, Anaimudi is a peak. Mudi means a point. Okay. Then say for example, slightly north of it, Tottabetta. Tottabetta politically it is there in Tamil Nadu, the second highest peak of Western Ghats. Then further, if you slightly move north, you may find Kudremukh and Mulayanagiri of what? Karnataka. And further, my dear friends, if you are there in Maharashtra, you have some of the very important places, Mahabaleshwar. Very important because this is one place from where almost 6 rivers originate, including the second largest river of the peninsular India called as what? Krishna. Mahabaleshwar. Okay. Then you have peaks like Salgir and Kalsubai, again part of Maharashtra. My dear friends, somewhere I have just given this peaks. Mahabaleshwar is very important. Why it is important this year, I'll tell you. Maybe the data are not available still now. Normally, when El Nino occurs, normally what happens? This Bay of Bengal branch of Indian monsoon slightly becomes weaker. Arabian Sea branch of Indian monsoon slightly becomes stronger. In that way, normally places like Cherrapunji and Mawsynram will be the wettest place in India. See, Cherrapunji or Mawsynram is not the wettest place, not only in India. It is considered to be the wettest place in the entire world. But interestingly, when El Nino occurs, or even say for example, Indian Ocean dipole, or say for example, Modoki-like situation occurs, Mahabaleshwar becomes the wettest place. For example, last time in 2018, my dear friends, which part of India has recorded the highest rainfall, which has recorded more rainfall than that of Cherrapunji and Mawsynram, if you ask me, it was Mahabaleshwar. Why I am somewhere discussing about this fact now? Because again, this year is a year of El Nino. Somewhere, I believe that maybe only if the data comes in, right? Somewhere you will be in a situation to what? Somewhere consider this. So during El Nino condition, Mahabaleshwar becomes a central point of focus. Okay, right. Now, so the very important peaks we have taken for our consideration. Now, one pattern you find. What is this pattern you find? Say, for example, this pattern, Ane Mudi to, say, for example, Salgir Kalsubai, I have arranged somewhere from south to north. Now, once you refer your atlas later, if not now, later, my friends, you will also find that as you move north along the Western Ghats, you will be finding the height of this peak considerably reduces. The height of the peak, if it reduces, it also gives you an idea that the height of the mountain itself is what getting reduced. Okay. My dear friends, very important when I talk about Western Ghats, my dear friends. Height of Western Ghats decreases from south to north. Southern part of Western Ghats is elevated. Northern parts of Western Ghats is what? Somewhere it is truncated. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now coming here, just looking at your chat box. God only knows what is the meaning of it. Okay, right. Fine, my dear friends. Now coming here, right. When I talk about, say, for example, all these peaks, as I said, when you start arranging from south to north, the height of these peaks decreases, giving you a signal that height of the mountain also decreases. Now here, why this fact is very important, I'll tell you. Because normally when I talk about southwest monsoon, my dear friends, for southwest monsoon, Western Guard act as one perfect orographic barrier. It will be acting as an orographic barrier. Orographic barrier in the sense, whenever a mountain lies perpendicular to the movement of a wind, right? Whenever it lies perpendicular to the movement of the wind, using one slope of the mountain, this wind will be rising. That's what you call them as what? Windward slope. More is the rise, more will be the condensation. More is the condensation, more will be the precipitation. It means if the height of the mountain is more elevated towards the south, it means along the west coast, I'll be having more precipitation towards the south, and I'll be comparatively having less precipitation in the north. So, along the west coast, one very important observation we have. Okay, only this fact. I'm just talking about the precipitation distribution in India. But say, for example, only one fact I'm just taking it. If you're there along peninsular India, if you're there in peninsular India, particularly if you're there along the west coast of India, you find one thing: the precipitation decreases from south to north. Precipitation decreases from what? South to north. Why? It is all because of height of Western Ghats. So in that way, Malabar coast will be very, very wet. Then Konkan coast is also wet. I'm not denying the fact, but it is not as wet as Malabar coast. Okay. So one very important observation. Right, my dear friends. And we do have some of the very important gaps along the Western Ghats. See, what is a gap? Western Ghats is a continuous mountain. And the western side of Western Ghats, I also know the fact it is known for a very steep slopes. Known for a very steep slopes. Right? Technically, we call them as what? Escarpments. If that is the case, my dear friends, Western Ghats is a continuous mountain separating the peninsular part of India, the interior plateaus, and the coastal plains, particularly the west coast plains. So, ascending and descending along the mountain is not so easy, right? And that's the reason what facilitates the transit and transport between, say, for example, right? What somewhere facilitates the transit and transport? Somewhere I understand it is all about the gaps, my dear friends. Whatever the gaps you have, gaps are the one which somewhere facilitates the transit and transport. In that way, my dear friends, what does a means gap, if you ask me? Somewhere you would have heard about this word called as pass, right? Changla, Shipkila, Karakoram Pass, right? Burzil Pass, so many passes are there in high altitudinal mountains. So, whatever pass, the concept of pass in higher altitudes, somewhere the same concept in lower altitudes, you call them as what? Gaps. So, what is a gap or pass, if you ask me, my dear friends? Somewhere, if I just talk about a low lying area in a continuous mountain, which facilitates the connectivity to either side of the mountain. You call them as what? Gaps. It's a low-lying area, right? Whenever I have a low-lying area in a continuous mountain stretch, I call them as what? Gap. Name itself says gap, right? And gaps are the one, as I said, it facilitates both transit and transport. It facilitates connectivity between either side of the mountain. In that way, my dear friends, some of the very important gaps we have. What are the very important gaps we have? For example, if you're there in Maharashtra, we have this Talghat gap. See, Talghat gap is that gap which almost connects Mumbai with the rest of northern parts of India, right? Via Nasik, it connects. But northern part of India and Mumbai is actually connected through what? Talghat gap. That's the reason Talghat gap is called as gateway of Mumbai. Whereas you do have another gap called as what? Borghat gap. You call them as what? Gateway of Konkan, my dear friends. Borghat gap. Gateway of Konkan. Where Mumbai and peninsular part of India is largely connected. Through Pune it is connected. And further, say for example, through Bengaluru. And finally it gets connected to what? Chennai. Okay. You call them as what? Borghat gap. And my dear friends, we have one very prominent gap where even in your atlas you can find this gap. You call them as what? Palakkad gap. Either you call it as Palakkad gap or you call them as what? Palghat gap. Both way you can call it as. Both way. You can retain this word called as ghat here also. Okay. You can call them as what? Ghat. Gap in the ghat. That's what the meaning is. Okay. Right. Either you call them as what? Palakkad gap or you call them as what? Palghat gap. Either way, you can call it as. Okay. Right, my dear friend. Right. Somewhere I'm just talking about this gaps as such, right? Talghat and Borghat gaps as such, right? Now see, I'm talking about Palakkad gap. Palakkad gap is a very prominent gap, very, very prominent gap. For the simple reason, Palakkad gap is so extensive and it allows, say, for example, even the southwest monsoon to enter what? The Coromandel coast. Otherwise, let me tell you, when I talk about Coromandel coast, politically, say, for example, if I just call it as Tamil Nadu, the Coromandel coast. Coromandel coast, the major source of precipitation is northeastern monsoon, not the southwest monsoon. Entire India, the larger part of India, 90% of Indian landmass receives precipitation from southwest monsoon. But Tamil Nadu alone, the major source of precipitation is northeastern monsoon. Okay. In that way, it is not entire Tamil Nadu or entire Coromandel coast experience precipitation from northeastern monsoon. For districts like Coimbatore district, the major source of precipitation is what? Southwest monsoon. So what is allowing the southwest monsoon to enter Tamil Nadu or Coromandel plains is what? Palakkad gap. So Palakkad gap is so extensive. So it plays a climatological role also. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Further, this Western Ghats, my dear friends, you also call them as a climate divide. You also call them as what? Water divide. What is a climate divide? I'll tell you, my dear friends. Okay. What exactly is a climate divide? I'll tell you. If a mountain separates any continuous mountain, only continuous mountain can be an example of a climate divide. Name itself says climate and divide. When a mountain separates two different types of climate, for example, Western Ghats, if I just take it, one side of Western Ghats, what you experience is a par moist climatic condition. Another side of Western Ghats, what you experience is what? Semi-arid type of climatic condition. See, Malabar coast, Konkan coast, they are very, very wet. And wherever you have this par moist climatic condition, my dear friends, these are the places where you'll be finding evergreen forest, right? Very wet. See, only mainland India, only two places are there which you regard as par moist climatic condition. Only two places. What are the two places in mainland India? You call it as a par moist climatic condition. One is West Coast. The second is what? The northeastern states. These are the only two regions where you experience what? Par moist climatic condition. Okay. So one side of Western Ghats is par moist climatic condition. Another side, the rain shadow interiors of Sahyadris. You call them as what? Semi-arid regions. One side it is Malnad. The wetter zone you call them as what? Malnad. The drier zones you call them as what? Rain shadow interiors of Western Ghats. Or Western Ghats is also called as what? Sahyadri. You can also call it as what? Rain shadow interiors of Sahyadri. So what I'm just trying to say, this mountain is actually separating two different climate. That's the reason you call them as what? Climate divide. Then comes, my dear friends, this Western Ghat is also called as a water divide. See, what is a water divide? Somewhere you're finding a very thin line. This is the line which is separating the east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers in India. So somewhere if I just talk about Western Ghats, my dear friends, Western Ghats separates these east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers. For example, the rivers which originates from the western wall of Western Ghats flow towards the west. You call them as what? West flowing river. And the river which is originate from the eastern slope is actually flowing towards what? East. You call them as what? East flowing river. For example, rivers like Godavari, where exactly it originates from? The second longest river in India. Third largest river, but second longest river. Second largest river is Indus in India. Whereas second longest river, if you ask me, it is Godavari. Long and large, there is a small difference between them. That's why Godavari, you call them as what? Dakshin Ganga. Ganga of the south, right? Now, my dear friends, where exactly Godavari originates from, if you ask me, it originates from eastern wall of Western Ghats. It is originating from Western Ghats, originating from the eastern wall and flowing towards the east. Where Krishna is originating from, again it is originating from what? Eastern wall of Western Ghats and flowing towards what? East. So somewhere I understand. This Western Ghat is actually separating these east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers. Correct. That's the reason these Western Ghats, you call them as what? Water divide. Right? You call them as what? Water divide also. Right, my friends. So why exactly it is called as a climate divide? Why exactly it is called as a water divide? We have an idea. That's some of the basic facts about Western Ghats, my friends. Right. And of course, I was talking about this question which was asked in 2017. One simple statement they have asked: Western Ghats are spread over 5 states only. See, whenever this word only comes in, my dear friends, kindly take a look in your examination. Okay. And this 2017, they have asked a question because I said, right, that's a time when a report on Western Ghats was published. Right. That may be the primary reason why exactly such a question was asked. Otherwise, also they can ask you. Right. Right, my dear friends. Now, moving on from Western Ghats, going to Eastern Ghats. See, Eastern Ghats, much of the facts we do not have. Where exactly Eastern Ghats extends from, if you ask me, it extends from river Brahmani, Odisha to Nilgiri in Tamil Nadu. And one small Nilgiri, I cannot say Nilgiri in Tamil Nadu to be very precise, a kind of a tri-junction. But one thing is there, my difference. This Nilgiri itself already we said it is part and parcel of what? Western Ghats. It means Nilgiri is the place where Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats meets each other. Okay. Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats meets each other, but somewhere I know that this Nilgiri mountain itself is part of what? Western Ghats. Okay, right. And my dear friends, this mountain is highly dissected. What is the reason? Why exactly this mountain is highly dissected, if you ask me? The reason, if you ask me, reason is very simple. It is all about rivers. For example, I was talking about rivers like what? Godavari, rivers like Krishna, rivers like Kaveri, such a large rivers. And these rivers, only if it somewhere cuts across Eastern Ghats, somewhere it can confluence with the ocean, if not with Bay of Bengal. Am I right? So riverine dissection is the major reason why exactly Eastern Ghats is not continuous. Height of Eastern Ghats is not so great, my dear friends. It is only somewhere around 600 meters. Western Ghats is 1300 meters, Eastern Ghats is just 600 meters. One is tall mountain, one is short mountain. Okay. Now, when I talk about some of the very important peaks, my dear friends, very important peaks. Odisha, you may find peaks like Mahendragiri and Devodimunda. See, once Mahendragiri is regarded as the highest peak of India. Excuse me, highest peak of Eastern Ghats, right? Once. But today we have identified, discovered so many peaks which is taller than Mahendragiri. For example, Devodimunda and Odisha itself we regard somewhere this peak is taller than Mahendragiri. Right? And we do have peaks like Arayakonda and Jindagada in Andhra Pradesh. As of now, the net sources says that Jindagada peak, the Jindagada peak happens to be the highest peak of what? Eastern Ghats. Happens to be the highest peak of Eastern Ghats. Jindagada as a peak. Okay. And one more thing, see, this is not officially declared because I believe that Survey of India is not conducted. Most of the, right, the regions, survey of India, somewhere the traditional triangulation method we have done, mostly from the satellite image and others, we somewhere declare that Jindagada is the highest peak. Popular information says as of today, Jindagada is regarded as the highest peak of what? Eastern Ghats. Okay, right, my dear friends. Now, talking about this interior plateaus, my dear friends. Western Ghats we have done with, Eastern Ghats we have done with. Okay. And talking about this interior plateaus, first I'm just talking about this Deccan Plateau. See, Deccan Plateau is the largest plateau of India. You're there in the peninsular part of India, roughly it takes the shape of the inverted triangle, my dear friends. Inverted triangle, almost, when talk about Deccan, almost the peninsular part of India, almost all the states of peninsular part of India, it has its presence of this Deccan Plateau. It takes the shape of the inverted triangle. And somewhere towards the northwestern part of this Deccan Plateau is where you have this Deccan Trap. I think already we have seen enough about this Deccan Trap. Deccan Trap is a lava plateau, my dear friends. Lava plateau. And it got formed during, say, for example, this Mesozoic era. Right? Sometimes you call them as lava plateau, or simply you call them as what? Flood basalt. Flood basalt. Or you call them as what? Flood basaltic province. Completely they are lava plateau. A fissure type of volcanic feature. Deccan Trap. And my dear friends, Deccan Trap is the one, or wherever I have a lava plateau, this is the place where you have the black soil belt in India. You have this black soil belt in India. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, Deccan Trap, where all we have this Deccan Trap, if you ask me, largely Deccan Trap is confined to Maharashtra, Gujarat, parts of Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and northern parts of Karnataka. Largely Deccan Trap. Okay. So Deccan Trap is seen as the modified part of Deccan Plateau. Deccan Trap itself is not regarded as a separate landform feature as such. But otherwise, barring the exception of Deccan Trap, my dear friends, I understand, say for example, as I already said, this is the largest plateau in India, right? Almost it takes the shape of an inverted triangle, right? It takes the shape of inverted triangle. Okay. And when I talk about, say, for example, this Deccan Plateau, my dear friends, the orientation of this Deccan Plateau, say, for example, the gradient or the slope of this Deccan Plateau is from what? West to east. For example, let me tell you, the western flank of Deccan Plateau is slightly elevated, and towards the east there is a slope. See, we have the evidence, for example, on the face of it, we have some of the very important evidence, right, to confirm the same. For example, I talked about rivers like Krishna and Godavari. Rivers like Krishna and Godavari almost started from this west coast, because Western Ghats is very, very near toward west coast. From there it started, and almost it was, say, for example, flowing towards what? The eastern side. Somewhere it was flowing towards the eastern side. So, rivers like Godavari, rivers like Krishna, rivers like Kaveri, they flows over Deccan Plateau. Almost all these rivers, my dear friends, they originate very near to the western flank of Deccan Plateau, and they flow towards the eastern side. The east flowing nature of the river itself says the slope of Deccan Plateau is towards what? East. The slope is towards west to east. So west is elevated, the slope runs towards what? The eastern side as such. Okay. Right, my dear friends. That's what I'm just insisting. The slope is from what? West to east. It is very, very important. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, some basic facts. We have just talked about this Deccan Plateau as such. Now, going to the second plateau, Chota Nagpur Plateau. See, Chota Nagpur Plateau is the most exploited plateau in India, we said. Most exploited plateau. And when I talk about Chota Nagpur Plateau, it is not only Chota Nagpur Plateau. Largely, it is confined to the state of Jharkhand, my dear friends. Jharkhand. But I can also include the adjoining Rajmahal Hills, Jharkhand West Bengal border, Garjat Hills of Odisha, right? Ramgarh Hills of Chhattisgarh, and Hazaribagh Plateau of again Jharkhand Bihar border. All these are part and parcel of this Chota Nagpur Plateau. They are dissected parts of Chota Nagpur Plateau. With small clarification. Chhattisgarh, if I just take it as a state, northern parts of Chhattisgarh, where I have Ramgarh Plateau or Ramgarh Hills, is part of Chota Nagpur Plateau. Whereas the southern parts of Chhattisgarh, my dear friends, right, where I have this Dandakaranya tableland or Bastar Plateau, is more a part of what? Deccan. So Chhattisgarh is a state where I have the presence of Deccan Plateau as well as Chotanagpur Plateau. The southern parts of Chhattisgarh is more like Deccan Plateau. The northern parts of Chhattisgarh is more like what? The Chotanagpur Plateau. Okay? Right, my dear friends. Fine. Now moving further, far eastern table. When talk about this far eastern tableland, my dear friends, all the plateau sections, what you have in northeastern states, we call them as what? Far eastern tableland. Northeastern state. In that way, entire Meghalaya is a plateau. Right? Entire Meghalaya, three prominent plateau sections we have: Garo, Khasi, and Jaintia. Garo, Khasi, and Jaintia. Okay. So these are the, say, for example, three very important plateau sections of Meghalaya, and entire Meghalaya is a plateau. So, a small clarification according to PIB sources, according to administrative classification, they say that Himalayas also extends in Meghalaya. Meghalaya is also regarded as an Himalayan state where administrative classification. But geographically, Meghalaya is not Himalayas. Geographically, Meghalaya is a shield. Meghalaya is the place where I have the extension of a plateau. But still, for examination, which classification you should prefer if you ask me? I will say you should go for administrative classification. Okay? Because that is more popular. Right? Right, my difference. Now, entire Meghalaya is a shield. Entire Meghalaya is a plateau. Whereas when I talk about Assam, you have mountains like Mikir and Beryl. This Beryl range, my difference, sometimes you also call them as what? Karbi Anglong Plateau. And this Karbi Anglong Plateau is regarded as the easternmost plateau of India, my dear friends. Easternmost plateau of India, Karbi Anglong, right? So somewhere if you ask me which is the easternmost plateau, I'll say it is Karbi Anglong. Okay. I'll talk about it, right? Easternmost and westernmost, all this we'll be just talking about it. Okay. Far Eastern Tableland, Assam and Meghalaya. Entire Meghalaya is a shield and part of Assam is also a shield. That is Azoic Plateau. Right, my dear friends. Now, coming to Malwa and Bundelkhand, almost you are there in the tri-junction between Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and say, for example, Uttar Pradesh. So, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttar Pradesh, the tri-junction, this is the place where exactly we have this Malwa and Bundelkhand plateaus. Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh side, you have this Malwa plateau. Whereas Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh side, you have this Bundelkhand plateau. Bundelkhand. And my dear friends, let me tell you, this is the place where this region is known for ravine. Ravine is a bad land topography, where you will not be having a flat land, right? Finest example, Chambal ravines, Chambal Valley. You call them as what? Bad land topography, right? You call them as what? Bad land topography. Here I have written as bad land. It is bad land topography, right? And how exactly this bad land topography has been resulted, if you ask me, it has resulted by what? A kind of an erosion called as what? Gully erosion, my dear friends. Okay. A kind of an erosion called as gully erosion. Bad land topography. Gully erosion means the name itself says, right? Gully means a very small street. This uneven erosion, we call them as what? Gully erosion. So Malwa Bundelkhand is known for this bad land topography as such. Right, my dear friends. Now, finally, among all the plateau sections, the peninsular plateau, what we have is what? Kathiawar tableland. Right? Among them, some of the very important plateau sections of Kathiawar tableland, we have this Mandav Hills, Gir Range, and Girnar. Gir Range is very popular. Am I right? Known for this Asiatic lion, the only national park what we have for what? Asiatic lion. Right. And let me also tell you, my difference, this Mandav Hills or Gir Range, particularly if I just talk about it, they are known for a kind of a drainage called as what? Radial drainage. See, what is a water divide? Somewhere I understood. When a mountain separates two sets of river flowing in two different directions, I call them as what? Water divide. Then what is a radial drainage? Simple. A place from a mountain from where or a plateau from where, if I have too many rivers flowing in too many directions, you call them as what? Radial drainage. It is an example of a centrifugal flow. Radially, the water will be flowing. To justify that it is an example of a radial drainage, the minimum number of rivers needed is 3, And these three rivers should be flowing in what? Three different direction, at least three different direction. See, maximum I can have n number of rivers, right? But to be very precise, at least two. Somewhere justify that it is an example of a radial drainage. The minimum number of rivers needed is what? Three. Right, my dear friends. Now, right. So Kathiawar table and some basic facts we have an idea. And let me also tell you this Kathiawar tableland, you're there in Gujarat, is regarded as the westernmost plateau of India. Westernmost plateau of India. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now further, all this peninsular plateau we have taken it. Now talking about, say, for example, this central highlands. Central highlands. Okay. Central highlands. Somewhere, my dear friends, when I talk about the central highlands, starting with Aravalli as a mountain. When I talk about Aravalli as a mountain, of course, I told you, somewhere, Aravalli is an example of old fold mountain, right? It is an example of old fold mountain, but still for all practical purpose, we call it as a plateau because the present height of Aravalli is only 600 meters. The 600 meters of height, it is not too great a height to be called as what? A mountain itself. So highly denuded, today you call them as what? More like a plateau, central highlands. Extension, where exactly we have this, say for example, right? Where exactly we have this extension, if you ask me, it is from Ahmedabad to Delhi. So in between, my dear friends, it covers some of the states. It has its extension in some of the states like Gujarat, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi, and for all practical reason, adjoining Delhi, I can also include what? Uttar Pradesh. And what is very, very important, my dear friends? See, for example, last class we talked about desert formation. And somewhere I told you, say, for example, what exactly is the primary reason for the formation of a desert? At least I told you that there are three reasons, right? Number one, the perennial effectivity of offshore trade wind. Number two, this region coming under the influence of cold ocean currents. Number three, this region experiencing the presence of permanent high pressure zone. Everything is fine. But if you ask me, we have a desert. India also has a tropical desert called a Thar desert. Does this Thar desert was created due to the perennial effectivity of offshore trade wind? If you ask me, answer is no. We do have southwest monsoon, my dear friends. But what is interesting, why exactly Thar has become a desert, if you ask me? The answer is Aravalli. The culprit is Aravalli. Am I right? Why exactly I say culprit is Aravalli? Because Aravalli and southwest monsoon almost they lie parallel to each other. The flow direction of southwest monsoon is almost parallel to Aravalli. So Aravalli fails to act as that orographic barrier. If you remember earlier, we said Western Ghats, if you take it, Western Ghat acts as a perfect orographic barrier. Only a mountain, when it somewhere lies perpendicular to the movement of a wind, it will be acting as that orographic barrier. Now here what happens, it is lying parallel. So it means, say for example, this wind is simply passing this mountain. So only if a mountain is lying perpendicular, using one slope of the mountain, this air mass wind can rise. If it is rising, more condensation can happen. Condensation can result in what? Precipitation. But Aravalli is as good as not having a mountain itself, right? So it is all about why Thar has become a desert, if you ask me. It is all because of orientation of Aravalli, which fails to act as that orographic barrier. Because Aravalli lies parallel to the movement of southwest monsoon, right? So one noticeable peak is there in Aravalli, my dear friends, that is Guru Shikhar. Above mountains, you have this Guru Shikhar. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, having said this, talking about some basic information about Aravalli, right? Aravalli is also a climate divide. Aravalli is also a water divide. Because when talk about Aravalli, my dear friends, Aravalli separates two different types of climate. For example, one side of Aravalli, what we have is what? Arid climate. Desert, dry. Other side of Aravalli, what I have is what? Say, for example, all these regions, we call them as what? Semi-arid type of a climate. Okay. So Aravalli separates arid and semi-arid type of a climate. See, only western Rajasthan is a desert, not the eastern Rajasthan, right? Eastern Rajasthan is dry, but not so dry. It is semi-arid in nature. Okay. So you call it as what? A climate divide. Aravalli is also water divide by difference. Why I call it as a water divide? Because one river which originates from the western wall of Aravali. Very popular river. This river, you call them as what? River Luni. This Luni is more like a west flowing river. See, what is west flowing and east flowing river? Not necessarily that they should be flowing in the west, not necessarily that they should be flowing in the east. See, larger direction in west and east, that is okay. Why I am saying this statement, I'll tell you. Because Brahmaputra, for that case, if I just take it, Brahmaputra in India, my dear friends, largely you will be finding that Brahmaputra will be flowing towards what? West. In India, particularly when I talk about Assam, Brahmaputra will be flowing towards the west. But still, Brahmaputra, we call them as what? We call them as what? East flowing rivers. Why? Because larger flow, I should take it. But somewhere in, say for example, somewhere I'll take it this way. What is east flowing river and west flowing river? Any river which tries to confluence with the Bay of Bengal, you call them as what? East flowing river. Any river which tries to confluence, tries, not necessarily it should confluence, right? Any river which tries to confluence with the Arabian Sea, you call them as what? West flowing rivers. Okay. So River Luni is a west flowing river. Whereas on the eastern side, if I just talk about rivers like Banas, Banas is a tributary of Chambal. Chambal is a tributary of Yamuna. Yamuna is a tributary of Ganga. It means Banas is also a tributary of Ganga. So Ganga is a east flowing river. So Banas is also what? East flowing river. So my dear friends, Aravali, like Western Ghats, separates this east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers. See, one image, what I have taken it earlier, here also you can find it, right? Somewhere, the thin line, right? This thin line is the one which is separating the east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers in India. And you'll be finding that this thin line exactly overlaps over Western Ghats. This thin line exactly overlaps with what? Aravali as a mount. Right? Aravali as a mount. Okay. So Aravali is also what? Somewhere you can see it. Aravali. This is the place where I have the presence of Aravali. Right? So Aravali is also what? A water divide. Okay. Right, my dear friends. That's all about Aravali. And finally, my dear friends, when I talk about this Vindhyan, Satpura and Satmala, Vindhyan, Satpura and Satmala, they are block mountains. See, between any two block mountains, what is very normal and common, if you ask me, it is a rift valley. It is a rift valley is what? Very, very common. And rift valley, because most of the time the rift valley occupies a negative altitude. It occupies a negative altitude. Very ordinarily, this rift valley will be occupied by waters. Right? And the water occupied rift valley between Vindhyans and Satpura, you call them as Narmada. And the water occupied rift valley between Satpura and Satmala, you call them as what? Tapi. And that's the reason, my dear friends. Somewhere again, this image, if I just take it for our reference, see, somewhere, when I talk about the east flowing rivers and west flowing rivers, if I just take it, right? Till here, I don't have a problem. But all of a sudden, here, see, you find one major deviation. Find one major deviation here. Okay. Major deviation. Somewhere I can find it. Right? And my difference, this major deviation is all because of what? Narmada and Tapi. This rift valley is the major reason why exactly Narmada and Tapi is flowing towards the west, while all other rivers in the peninsular India are flowing towards what? Eastern side. If rift valley would have not been there, Narmada and Tapi would have also been flowing towards what? Say for example, towards the east, like any other rivers as such. Okay? Right. Right, my dear friends. Okay, now Vindhyan, Satpura, and Satmala, we have just taken for that case. Right. Now, when I talk about Vindhyans, it is not only Vindhyans, I can extend Vindhyans. Right. In Madhya Pradesh, we can have this Vindhyan scar plant, Bahelkhand, and Kaimur hills. Similarly, if I extend Satmura, we have mountains like Gwalighad, Mahadev hills, and Maikala range. And again, you extend Satmala range, you have Ajanta hills of Maharashtra. The rest of these mountains, majorly all these mountains, are largely present in Madhya Pradesh, whereas Ajanta hills is largely present as what? Maharashtra. Okay. All these mountains are also what type of mountain? If you ask me, they are old block mountain. Again, for all practical reason, we are classifying them as what? Central highland itself. I have given you the average height of these mountains also. I have just given it. Okay. And one point I can take it. For example, if I am there in Maikala range, you may find a peak called as Amarkantak peak. Very important. Why? Because what we have taken as an example of this Gir range or Girnar, along with Mandav Hills, we have taken as an example of radial drainage. Amarkantak Hill is the most important example of a radial drainage because are the very important rivers, the rivers which is originating from Amarkantak Hill, plateau or a peak. It's a very important river. For example, somewhere I said, right, to justify a mountain as an example of a radial drainage, minimum number of rivers needed is what? 3. And these 3 rivers should be flowing in what? 3 different directions as such. In that way, right, we have rivers like Narmada, we have rivers like Son. Son is the largest peninsular tributary of Ganga. We have tributaries like what? Hasdo. Hasdo is one of the major tributaries of what? Mahanadi. Okay. So Narmada, Son and Hasdo. Okay. Since all 3 rivers, many rivers are there, only the 3 example I am just taking it. Because all 3 are a major example. Right. Amarkantak Hill itself has become what? One very important example of what? Radial drainage as such. Right. So, right, my dear friends, this is all about the plateaus of India. Now moving to the northern mountain wall, Himalayas. Right, Himalayas. Now, see, when talk about Himalayas, call them as a northern mountain wall. Completely, it is an example of young fold mountains. All the facts I know, the convergence of which two plate created the creations of the Himalayas, if you ask me. It is all about Eurasian plate and Indo-Australian plate convergence has created this, say for example, this young fold mountains. Today it is a mighty mountain, but until recently this mountain was what? A sea, ocean. Am I right? Tethys Sea. Tethys Sea got transformed. See the beauty, my difference. Once a sea, now a mighty mountain. But what about Aravali? Once mighty, today nothing. Am I right? Life keeps on changing, my dear friends. Okay, that's a clue what I should take it for my right any examination or even for life. What I am today doesn't determine what I'll be tomorrow. Okay, but somewhere I have to work hard to become right something like Himalayas in the future. Okay. Now talking about this northern mountain wall, why it is called as a wall, if you ask me, because climatologically it plays a very important role. When I talk about wall, my dear friends, this mountain is the one which do not allow the southwest monsoon to enter what? Southwest monsoon not entering what? China. Somewhere Himalayas almost act as the terminal orographic barrier for southwest monsoon. Almost near complete moisture of southwest monsoon is drained by this Himalaya as a mountain. And similarly, Himalayas plays a very, very important role in not allowing the cold Siberian wind from what? Entering India also. This wind you call them as what? Either Purgas or you call this wind as what? Buran. Right? So somewhere I understand Himalayas both ways it plays a very important role in determining the Indian climate, regulating the Indian climate. Right? Himalayas moderates Indian type of climate. That's the reason Himalayas plays a very important role climatologically, economically, even security aspect as such. Wall, when I talk about wall, it acts as a natural barrier, right? Say for example, otherwise, say if Himalayas would have not been there, so many intrusions and so many invasions would have been taken place in India. See, even then we had plenty of invasions, right? People were, say, for example, somewhere coming to India through a very narrow pass, right? Only, say, for example, the bravest of brave came to what? India, because they have to somewhere ascend and descend the Himalayan mountains, which is not so easy, right? So, if that is the case, my dear friends, if the Himalayas would have not been there, very easily, say, for example, n number of invasions would have happened in what? India. It acted as that natural barrier, right? And say, for example, Himalayas is giving rise to plenty of perennial rivers of India, and perennial rivers of India is very important for Indian agricultural system as such. So security aspect, climatological aspect, or say for example the economic aspect, cultural aspect, whichever aspect you take, the Himalayas is very, very important. Okay, it acts as a wall as such. Okay, right, my dear friends. Now, having said this, when I talk about Himalayas, how exactly you can classify these Himalayas? See, when I talk about the northern mountain wall, what do you call them as Himalayas? I can classify them as main Himalayas. All that mountain which is located beyond this main Himalayas, I can call them as what? Trans Himalayas. And what is located on the eastern side of the India, we call them as what? Purvanchal. The main Himalayas, 3 parallel ranges put together, you call them as what? Main Himalayas. The Himadri, Himachal, and Shivalik. But in your atlas, you will not find it as Himadri. You will be finding it as what? The Great Himalayas. You will not find it as Himachal. The individual names of Himachal ranges will be given. For example, Pir Panjal, Dauladhar, Masuri, Kumaon, Mahabharata range, Darjeeling Hills, Mirianabar. Individual names will be given. When talk about Shivalik range, of course, Shivalik range is given as Shivalik itself. Right? Very mighty mountain, continuous mountain. Particularly when I talk about Himadri, Himadri you call them as what? Great Himalayas. Why it is great? Both in height and extension. 6,000 meters of height, but 2,400 kilometers of east-west extension it has. On the other hand, my dear friends, Trans-Himalayas, all those mountains which is confined, located beyond the Himalayas, you call them as what? Trans-Himalayas. Completely confined to the Union Territory of Ladakh. Right? Three mountains we have, Karakoram, Ladakh and Zanskar are the three mountain ranges what we have. Okay? Right, my dear friends. And all the mountains which is confined to the northeastern states, you call them as what? Purvanchal. For example, see, all these mountains, Karakoram, Ladakh and Zanskar, the three mountains, if I just take it, you call them as what? Trans-Himalayas. Whereas when I talk about, say, for example, the Great Himalayas, Himachal and Shivalik range put together, you call them as what? Main Himalayas. And all the mountains which is there in northeastern states, somewhere overlapping is there. Let's not mind about it. You call them as what? Purvanchal. You call them as what? Eastern Himalayas. Okay. I'm just dividing into two categories. Trans Himalayas, the main Himalayas, and the Purvanchal. One by one, if I just take it for the discussion. I'll start from Trans Himalayas. Trans Himalayas is completely confined to the Union Territory of Ladakh. Completely it is confined to the Union Territory of what? Ladakh. Right, my friends. Now, one by one, if I just take it. As I said, Trans Himalayas, we have three mountains, Karakoram, Ladakh and Zanskar. See, Karakoram range, Ladakh range and Zanskar range. For example, when I talk about Ladakh, Ladakh is a common name, my friends. Ladakh is a UT, Union Territory, right? Ladakh is a plateau. Even the cold desert, you call them as what? Ladakh. Cold desert. Ladakh is also a range, right? So we do have a Ladakh range, we have a Ladakh Union Territory, we have a Ladakh plateau, we have a Ladakh cold desert. But what I should understand, all Ladaks are different. But all these Ladaks are there in what? Ladakh itself. Okay, right. So Ladakh range is there in Union Territory of Ladakh. Ladakh plateau is there in Union Territory of Ladakh. Cold desert called as Ladakh is also there in what? UT of what? Ladakh. Okay. So only thing is that name is common, but features are different. So Ladakh range is different. Ladakh plateau is different. Cold desert called as Ladakh overlaps with this Ladakh plateau. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, some of the very important rivers of this region, my dear friends. You have rivers like Indus itself. Between Karakoram and Ladakh, we have this river Shyok which is flowing. Between Ladakh and Zanskar, we have this Indus itself is flowing. Shyok is a right bank tributary of Indus. And let me tell you, my dear friends, when I talk about Shyok, Shyok has one more tributary. This tributary you call them as what? Galwan. Okay. See, LAC is a place that you should look for. Okay. Sometimes when I talk about the places in news, my dear friends, LAC is very, very important. Some of the places repeatedly it is asked in news, right? It was there in news. For example, when I talk about, right, places like Galwan, places like Hot Spring, right? Even places like Pangong So, right? All these places, my dear friends, they are very, very important. Very, very important, right? So kindly look for these regions. Trans-Himalayan regions, I feel it is very, very important given the current situation. And when I talk about the height of this Trans-Himalayas, my dear friends, it is somewhere around 6,000 meters. And when I talk about peak, my dear friends, there are plenty of peaks. Among them, the most prominent peak is what? K2. Otherwise called as Godwin Austen, or locally it is also called as what? Chagori. And undoubtedly, my dear friends, K2 is regarded as the highest peak in India, right? And it is the second highest peak in the entire world. Okay, see here, K2's height is somewhere around 8,611 meters. When I say K2 is regarded as the highest peak in India, sometimes you have a confusion. What is this? Some of the other, say for example, material I have studied that Kanchenjunga is regarded as the highest peak. When I talk about Kanchenjunga, my dear friends, Kanchenjunga, height of Kanchenjunga is 8,598 meters, if I'm not wrong. Obviously, I understand the height of K2 is taller than Kanchenjunga. But why exactly there is a confusion? Very simple. K2 is located in POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir. See, simple logic. Simple logic. If I do not regard K2 as the highest peak in India, it means I am considering POK as an integral part of Pakistan, right? Which itself is wrong. If I believe that POK is an integral part of India, then without any second question, I should take the fact that K2 is the highest peak in India. Okay, right. So let's not have any, say, for example, debate or confusion in this. K2 is there in POK. And I feel, as a patriotic Indian, I feel that, say, for example, POK is very much part of what? India. Okay, see, what is practicality and all, you leave it. Emotionally, we believe it. Okay. If that is the case, my dear friends, right? K2, whatever it is the case, right? If K2 is also given in your answer, Kanchenjunga is also given in my answer, I'll go for what? K2 as the highest peak in what? India. Okay. Right, my dear friends. And apart from this K2, this region, particularly K2, right, is located along this range called as what? Karakoram range. Karakoram range. And my dear friends, not only K2, we have peaks like Gesherbrum, we have peaks like Mesherbrum, plenty of peaks are here in this region. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Apart from this peaks, this region also has plenty of glaciers. For example, we have glaciers like Siachen Glacier, which is confined to this valley called as Nubra Valley. We have glaciers like Biofon Batora, which is confined to Sringer Valley. And Siachen Glacier is very important, my dear friends. Right? Siachen Glacier is very, very important. Why I'm saying Siachen Glacier is very important, I'll tell you, because when we talk about Siachen Glacier is regarded as the largest glacier in India, no denial about it. Siachen Glacier, the winter length is somewhere around 70 to 80 kilometers. See, somewhere you would have heard about something called as Karakoram anomaly, right? The glaciers in Karakoram, everywhere in the world, including Himalayas, glaciers are shrinking. But interestingly, say for example, this Karakoram range, right? Glaciers are accumulating, expanding. Right? You call them as what? Karakoram anomaly. Call them as Karakoram anomaly. In that way, undoubtedly, Siachen Glacier is the largest glacier in India. And this is regarded as the largest glacier in the entire world outside this temperate regions. Okay. And this is the highest battlefield of the world. Highest battlefield of the world. Right. All facts, it's very important, my dear friends. And somewhere it is located along this Karakoram range, very near to K2, very near to this Karakoram Pass also. Right? And any glacier is confined to a valley region, and this valley you call them as what? Nubra Valley, my dear friends. Right? And Biofon Batora glaciers are confined to what? Sringer Valley. We have plenty of other glaciers. We do have glaciers like Ispar and others. Then, my dear friends, we have plenty of passes in this region. Passes. Gaps of high altitude, we call them as what? Passes. There, Western Ghats, we have taken some of the passes gaps. Talghat Gap, Borghat Gap, Palaghat Gap, etc. Similarly, we have plenty of gaps in higher altitudes. You call them as what? Passes. In that way, my dear friends, are the very important passes, right? We have this Karakoram Pass, right? Parpeek or Kunjara Pass. This Parpeek or Kunjara Pass is that pass through which this very infamous CPEC, CPEC passes through. CPEC means this China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, connecting Pakistan and China. And of course, I understand this Karakoram, earlier we used to call it as Karakoram Highway. You call them as CPEC. CPEC passes through this pass called as what? Parpeek or Kunjara Pass. Then we do have Changla. See, La itself means pass. So separately, don't call it as Changla Pass. Simply call it as what? Changla. In that way, my dear friends. In that way, why Changla is very important? Because Changla is that place where this Indus River actually enters what? India. That's the reason Changla sometimes you call them as what? Gateway of Indus in India. You call it as Gateway of Indus in India. Okay? Right, my dear friends. Now, some of the very important passes we have taken it, and I'll give you one more pass, two more passes here. One pass you call them as what? Kardungla. Kardungla. Once this Kardungla was regarded as the highest motorable pass in the world. Once, not today. Not today. Today, we have one more pass which has replaced the world's, say for example, highest motorable road. That is also there in what? The Trans-Himalayan region. Right. All the Trans-Himalayan regions are there in Ladakh. One is Kardungla. Number two, my dear friends, today if you want to reach a place in the world by road, am I right? This is the place today where the highest motorable road passes through. It is something like, for example, if you're a cruiser, say for example, if you're a long distance, say for example, driver, right? Cruiser engine. Reaching this spot is more like reaching what? The Mount Everest for others. You call this pass as what? Umlingla. You call them as what? Umlingla. Again, Umlingla is there in Trans-Himalayan region. Okay. So both this pass, I feel it is important. All the passes what I have just given you, my dear friends, they are there in this Trans-Himalayan regions. Okay. So these are some of the very important facts regarding this Trans-Himalaya, my dear friends. Okay. Now some of the questions that was asked in the past. Siachen Glacier is situated to what they have asked. Okay. And one more, here also we have seen that again Nubra Valley, Siachen Glacier, they have asked it. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, in that regard, moving to main Himalayas. Very important. See, when I call this mountain as a wall, it is this Himalayas which is actually acting as this wall. To be very precise, it is this Himadri which is acting as that wall. So this main Himalayas are three parallel ranges put together. You call them as what? Main Himalayas. What are they? Himadri, Himachal, and Shivalik. Himadri, Himachal, and Shivalik are considered to be what? Main Himalayas as such. Okay. Main Himalayas. Now, my dear friends, when I talk about this main Himalayas, the Himadri particularly, sometimes you call them as what? Great Himalayas. You call them as what? Great Himalayas. Why it is called as Great Himalayas? For the simple reason, height. What is height? See, my dear friends, 6,000 meters. Trans Himalayas is also 6,000 meters. Great Himalayas is also what? 6,000 meters. See, 1,300 meters itself, we said it is tall mountains. You remember? Now, somewhere, see, my dear friends, Great Himalayas, right? Great Himalayas is 6,000 meters means what? Somewhere, say, for example, more than 4 times or nearly 5 times that of what? Maybe I'll call it as what? Right? Nearly 4 times that of this Western Ghats. Nearly 4 times it is larger a mountain like Western Ghats. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, having said this, the mountain height is, say, for example, 10 times that of today's Aravalli. Based on the location, you call them as what? Inner Himalayas. See, for example, three Himalayas we have. Himadri, Himachal is highly dissected, and Shivalik. This Himadri, you call them as Inner Himalayas. Himachal, you call them as Middle Himalayas. And Shivalik, you call them as what? Outer Himalayas. So, based on the location, you call them as what? Inner, middle, and outer. Sometimes, right, in examination, you may not find this word called as Himachal. They'll be calling it as, referring it as what? Middle Himalayas. Because it is located in the middle. Three ranges, if I just take it innermost, I call them as what? Great Himalayas. Inner Himalayas. Somewhere in the middle, Himachal, I call them as what? Middle Himalayas. Outer Shivalik, I call them as what? Outer Himalayas. That is based on location classification. So based on height also I can classify. Based on height, my dear friends, 6,000 meters tall mountains, you call them as what? Great Himalayas. Comparatively less in height, 4,500 meters, you call them as what? Lesser Himalayas. Shivalik can also be called as what? Lesser Himalayas. But along with Himachal, I can call Shivalik as what? Lesser Himalayas. Okay. That's where the larger idea is all about. Okay. Now, one by one, we have to take it. We have to discuss in detail. I'll start with this Himadri. Let's start with Himadri. Right. Now, when I talk about Himadri, you call them as what? Great Himalayas, or you call them as what? Inner Himalayas, as I already said. So, where exactly this mountain extends, if you ask me? This mountain extends from Nanga Parbat as a peak to Namcha Barwa as a peak. One way of saying so. Or I can say it extends from Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh. Or I can say one side it is bounded by this river Indus, taking a kind of a U-turn, syntaxial bend. Whereas another side, say for example, by this river called as Sangpo, again at syntaxial bend. Right? So either way I can say. Either I can say that The Himalayas or the Great Himalayas extends between Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh, or Nanga Parbat to Namcha Barwa, or Indus to Sangam. Either of the way you can call it as. Okay, right, my dear friends. Fine. So Himadri, the same SOP will follow. Some of the very important peaks, some of the very important glaciers, some of the very important passes. Okay, right. Some of the questions that was asked somewhere I have just brought in, my dear friends. Right. Somewhere you can also read the questions. Now, when I talk about, say, for example, the Great Himalayas, as I already said, the average height of this mountain is somewhere around 6,000 meters. And peaks, I have just arranged it simply. I have arranged it from what? West to east. Right? You have peaks like Nanga Parbat. Almost, say, for example, Nanga Parbat is there in Ladakh. Then, say, for example, Kamat and Nanda Devi in Uttarakhand. Kamat is more a part of Garhwal Himalayas. Nanda Devi is more a part of Kumaon Himalayas. See, I have just given you the latitudinal classification. But Himalayas can also be classified longitudinally. For example, in that way, when I talk about longitudinal classification, how exactly you can classify enter all these Himalayas put together. Of course, including the Trans Himalayas, my dear friends, all these Himalayas, what is confined here, you call them as what? Kashmir Himalayas. You call them as what? Kashmir Himalayas. Okay. What you have in Himachal Pradesh, see, now it is Himachal Pradesh. Earlier it was more like a Punjab. Am I right? So this Himachal Pradesh Himalayas, you call them as what? Punjab Himalayas. Okay. You call them as what? Punjab Himalayas. Then what you have in Uttarakhand, my dear friends? Uttarakhand itself, I can divide them into two. What lies in the western side, you call them as what? Garhwal Himalayas. And what you have in the eastern side, you call them as what? Kumaon Himalayas. You call them as what? Kumaon Himalayas. Right? And of course, Darjeeling Hills and others, I can call them as what? Sikkim Himalayas. And rest of it, I can call them as what? Arunachal Himalayas, or simply you call them as what? Purvanchal. Right? Instead of Purvanchal, or you call them as what? Arunachal Himalayas. This is more like longitudinal classification. What I have just given you is a latitudinal classification. Either way you can take it. Either way you can take it, as I said. Okay? Right, my dear friends. Now, talking about this peaks, my dear friends, are the very important peaks I have just brought in. Nanga Parbat, Kamat and Nanda Devi, both are there in Uttarakhand, and Everest. Everest is also part of the Great Himalayan region, but only thing is that I know the fact that Everest is not there in India. Everest is there in Nepal. Nepal and China border, you have this Everest. Right? And in Nepal, they don't call it as Everest, they call it as what? Sagar Mata. The local name of Everest in Nepal, you call them as what? Sagar Mata. And comes Kanchenjunga. Right? Kanchenjunga. Practically speaking, even Ministry of Home Affairs says, within Indian administered territory, if you ask me, which is the highest peak, it is Kanchenjunga of Sikkim. Then Namcha Barwa. Namcha Barwa is not there in India. It is there in China, near Arunachal Pradesh, just north of Arunachal Pradesh, we have this Namcha Barwa. So these are some of the very important peaks, right? That is part and parcel of this Great Himalayan region. Great Himalayan region. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now peaks we have done with. Then comes glaciers. And my dear friends, again, I feel that some of the glaciers are very, very important. Okay, very important. And see, when I talk about these glaciers, Gangotri, I know Gangotri is the place where Ganga as a river originates from. But interestingly, the river which emerges from Gangotri is not Ganga. This river you call them as what? Bhagirathi. Bhagirathi confluences with another river called as Alaknanda, and they meet at this place called as Deva Prayag or Dev Prayag. And from there, we have the confluence or the emergence of what? Ganga. So where exactly Ganga as a river, Ganga starts, if you see Ganga's origin, no doubt Gangotri. But where this river Ganga starts as Ganga, if you ask me, it is at Dev Prayag, not at Gangotri. Point to be remembered. And my dear friends, Uttarakhand is called as a land of Pancha Prayag. 5 Prayags we have. Vishnu Prayag, Nand Prayag, Karna Prayag, Rudra Prayag and Deva Prayag. These are the 5 Prayags what we have. Remembering the order and all, it is not needed. But one thing is there. What is very important? Somewhere Joshimath issue, somewhere when I talk about this Chardham regions, Chardham, right, the four holy places. And one of the reasons cited for the landslide or the sinking nature of this Joshimath, two reasons was cited. One, say, for example, it is natural. Subsidence of the land and emergence of the land is very natural. But apart from that, anthropogenic activities are also somewhere cited as the reason. Among them, some of the unsustainable power projects which has been developed in the Himalayan region is cited. Number one. Number two, the road that is connecting the four regions, four places of Chardham is also cited as one of the reasons. If that is the case, my dear friends, I should know that what exactly are those four places, right? What you very popularly call as what? Chardham. Okay. There's Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath, and Badrinath. Okay. Among them, two are glaciers. Yamunotri is a glacier from where river Yamuna originates from. Gangotri is a glacier from where river Bhagirathi originates from. Near Kedarnath also we do have a glaciers from where exactly river Mandakini originates from. And Badrinath is the place from where river Alaknanda originates from. If that is the case, I believe that this year this fact may be important. Okay, right. So some of the very important glaciers we have in Uttarakhand, plenty of glaciers we have. Gangotri and Yamunotri you have seen. And apart from that, we do have glaciers like Pindari. Pindari is the place where exactly this Pindar Ganga originates from. Pindar Ganga originates from. Then we do have glaciers like Milam. And of course, all these are there in Uttarakhand. If I'm there in Sikkim, my dear friends, we have a glacier called a Zamu Glacier. Right? Zamu Glacier, again a very important glacier. From where river Teesta originates from. And finally, my dear friends, we do have plenty of passes here in this region. Right? See, this pass, I'm just giving you just for a formality purpose. Right? All states, few passes I have just given it. Only if this pass is there in news, somewhere you can go for it. Otherwise, largely you can leave it. Okay. So somewhere it is all about the Great Himalayas, my dear friends. Now coming to the Himachal range. See, this Himachal range, either you call them as what? Lesser Himalayas, or you call them as what? Middle Himalayas. Lesser Himalayas or Middle Himalayas. This is a series of 8 mountains taken together. Collectively, you call them as what? Himachal range. Pir Panjal, Dauladhar, Mussoorie, Kumaon, Mahabharata, Darjeeling, Mirianamar. 8 mountains. Right? And my dear friends, these mountains are highly dissected. And what can be the reason for this dissection? Very simple. Answer. See, whenever I talk about the non-continuous nature of a mountain, either it can be due to faulting as a reason, breakage, faulting, right? Or what can be the another reason if you ask me? Riverine dissection. For example, Eastern Ghats we have taken it. Eastern Ghat it is more like what? Riverine dissection is the primary reason for the same. Okay, right. Now, much information is not there in Himachal region, but somewhere you have a kind of a deposit, Piedmont deposits in Himachal region. For example, if I just talk about the Piedmont deposits, and before talking about the Piedmont deposits, my dear friends, this Himachal region or Himachal ranges is also known for high altitudinal grasslands, high altitudinal pasture lands, grasslands. And this high altitudinal pasture land is nothing but what? Steppe, right? Nothing but what? Steppe. In Jammu and Kashmir, this high altitudinal grasslands, you call them as what? Mergs. So the classical example of Merg we have in the name of what? Gulmarg and Sonmarg. Okay. Whereas in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the same Mergs you call them as what? Bugiyals, my dear friends. You call them as what? Bugiyals. Whereas when I talk about the Piedmont locations, some of the deposits in the Piedmont location, this is very important. If you're there in Western Himachal region, if you're there in Western Himachal region, exactly between Himachal and Shivalik ranges, right? Himachal and Shivalik ranges, exactly between them, right? Himachal and Shivalik, exactly between them, my dear friends. You have a Piedmont deposits. You call them as what? Dunes. Dunes are known for what? Fine alluvial deposits. It's known for fine alluvial deposits. Okay. Fine in the sense, when I talk about, say, for example, the individual size of the granules of the soil, it will be very powdery. right? Very fine, very less in size. But slightly large in size, you call them as what? Coarse. Okay. So in that way, my dear friends, Western Himachal region, right? What you have is what? This dunes. You have this dunes. On the other hand, if I just talk about the Eastern Himachal region, right? That is, say, for example, the Piedmont locations, say, for example, somewhere in West Bengal and Assam. Assam, we do not have this mountain, but the Piedmont location, foothills of the mountain is there in what? Assam, right? Somewhere I can find it, right? If I'm there in this, say, for example, this Piedmont locations, Assam, you find coarse alluvial deposits. And this coarse alluvial deposits, you call them as what? Duars. So Western Himachal, what we have is dunes. Eastern Himachal, what you have is duars. Western Himachal, just south of Himachal, we have Shivalik, but Eastern Himachal, south of Himachal, we do not have Shivalik. Okay. Western Himachal, we have fine alluvial deposits. Eastern Himachal, we have coarse alluvial deposits. Western Himachal, you call them as dunes. Eastern Himachal, you call them as what? Duars. The basic difference between the deposits of Himachal regions, Piedmont locations, somewhere we have taken it. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Now, finally coming to the last part of this, the mighty mountain ranges, Shivalik range. Shivalik range, you call them as what? Outer Himalayas. You call them as what? Outer Himalayas. Shivalik range, my dear friends, Shivalik range is a place where today you have this active tectonic plate boundary. It means Shivalik is largely known for what? Earthquakes, highly prone to earthquake. And see, entire Himalayas is a young-fold mountain. Nobody is denying the fact. But among them, if you ask me, which mountain is the youngest young-fold mountain? Youngest young-fold mountain is Shivalik. Because all these mountains, see, for example, I have parallel ranges, Karakoram, Ladakh, Zaskar, the Great Himalayas, Himachal and Shivalik. 6 parallel ranges. All 6 parallel ranges did not had its development at the same time, one by one after another. So somewhere this tectonic plate boundary is shifting towards the south. So it means among the 6 fold mountains, what we have, the youngest will be Shivalik, whereas the oldest will be what? Karakoram. So as you slightly move north of Himalayas, the age of the mountain what increases? Because the plate tectonic or the plate boundary is actually shifting towards what? South. Okay. And say for example, like dunes and duars, my dear friends, the foothills of Shivalik also has, say for example, a deposit. This deposit we call them as what? Babar. We call them as what? Babar. Very big boulders and rocks. Very big boulders and rocks, we call them as what? Babar. Okay. And say for example, when I talk about this Babar, my dear friends, talk about Babar, this is a place where exactly, right, big boulders and rocks, landslided materials, right, all this put together, we'll be having this Babar. And see, Babar is a big boulders and rocks. And whenever I have a river, which is descending along the Shivalik, as and when it touches the ground, 2 things can happen. Because you have so much of void in this, say for example, so much of void in this region, temporarily, say for example, this river can disappear and it can reappear. Possibility number 1. Or because of, say for example, this big boulders and rocks, what happens, right? Big boulders and rocks you have, right? And because of this big boulders and rocks, my difference, there is a chance that, say for example, this river, right, can, say for example, distributes its water into different forms of distributaries. Okay. Distributaries. You call them as a braided profile. You call them as a braided profile. And one more thing. Because of this fact, what happens, this region becomes more like, right, a marshy land. And this marshland, what we have adjoining this Babar, we call them as what? Tarai region. Northern parts of Uttar Pradesh and northern parts of Bihar, you may find this Tarai regions. Okay. So Tarai is resulted by what? The Shivalik range. Right, my dear friends. Now, further. Finally, when I talk about Purvanchal, all this Himalayas, which is located on the eastern side of river Sangtu or Brahmaputra, collectively you call them as what? Purvanchal. Starting from Mishmi hills of Arunachal Pradesh, right? And all these mountains which is located on the eastern side, you call them as what? Purvanchal. And the average height is not so great, only 1300 meters. Pur means east, or you call them as what? Eastern Himachal, sorry, Eastern Himalayas. See, the word Purvanchal, somewhere it gets repeated in the sense. You're there in Bihar, or even, say, for example, you're there in the eastern Uttar Pradesh. Okay. Very near to, say, for example, Varanasi. Even, say, for example, the administrative divisions, you call them as what? Purvanchal. Okay. You call them as Purvanchal. Or even Tripura, there is a mountain called as Purvanchal. That is okay. Just for our convenience, all these eastern Himalayas collectively, you call them as what? Purvanchal. Starting from Mishmi Hills. Then when I talk about Patkaibam ranges, my difference. Patkaibam range of Arunachal Pradesh. This Patkaibam range in Arunachal Pradesh is regarded as the easternmost hill range of what? Himalayas in India. Then you have Naga Hills, Nagaland. Where you also find the very important peak here called as what? Saramat. Then you do have this Laimotal range and eastern Manipur hills of Manipur. And very interestingly, my dear friends, exactly between these two ranges, Laimotal range and eastern Manipur hills, you find one very important lake, unique lake, Loktak Lake. And what is the significance of this Loktak Lake, if you ask me, my dear friends? Of course, you might be knowing the significance. Loktak Lake is a lake where you have an island which floats. Island in the sense, it's a dynamic mix of vegetative debris, soil mix and others. So somewhere the density of this, say for example, this rock becomes lesser than water, so it floats. You call them as what? Pumdis. Or simply locally you call them as what? Pumdi. Pumdi is large enough so that it means small huts can also be constructed over this Pumdi. Okay. Laimotal range and eastern Manipur, exactly between them you have this Loktak Lake. Very important, unique lake. Imagine floating islands. If you want to go to the island, instead of you going to the island, you can call the island will come pick you up and you can go. See, sarcastic way of saying, but somewhere I just have to remember that it is very unique where I have floating islands. Okay. Then, my dear friends, the southernmost hill of Himalayas in India, Mizo Hills, sometimes also called as Lushai Mountains, and very important, like the Mandav Hills, like Amarkantak Hills, Lusha Hill is also known for what? Radial drainage. It is known for radial drainage. Okay, very important. And finally, I have this Tirupura Hills over. Right? Right, my dear friends, these are some of the constituents of Purvanchal. With this, we are also completing this snapshot of Himalayas. Now coming to the third physiographic division, you call them as what? Plains of India. See, plains of India, all these green shaded regions, you call them as what? Plains. For example, these plains of India, you can somewhere classify them, subclassify them into what? The northern plains and the southern plains. Okay. But one thing I understand, all the southern plains, if I just take it, all these green shaded regions of the southern plains, if I just take it, I find that all the southern plains are confined to what? The coastal margins, my difference. And that's the reason, instead of calling it as a southern plains, better we can call them as what? Coastal plain itself. So we can call it as what? Coastal plains. Okay. The southern plains or the peninsular plains, we can call them as what? Coastal plains. When I talk about Thar Desert, my dear friends, Thar Desert also I am just somewhere bringing it within the scope of what? Northern plains of India itself. See, when I talk about plains of India, my dear friends, where all we have these plains of India, see, the western Rajasthan, the eastern Rajasthan. Actually, say for example, here the eastern Rajasthan is not shown, but somewhere I can also include eastern Rajasthan. Entire Punjab is a plain, entire Haryana is a plain, entire Uttar Pradesh is a plain, entire Bihar is a plain, entire West Bengal is a plain. All right. Near complete Assam is a plain. Extensive. Northern plains of India is very extensive. Right. All this region, what I am shading, is the northern plains of India. Excuse me. Northern plains of India. And of course, I am also including this coastal plains. Coastal plains of India is not so extensive like northern plains of India, but still yes, plains. But see, I have states like Punjab, I have states like UP, States like Uttar Pradesh, states like Bihar, right? For example, if somebody is asking you, right, which is the most populated state in India, undoubtedly it is Uttar Pradesh. Which is the most densely populated state in India, it is Bihar. Which state has maximum agricultural production, it is UP. Which state has maximum agricultural productivity, if it is Punjab? Answer is Punjab. So one thing I understand, not only that, when I talk about, say, for example, the density of population, the most thickly populated state in India is what? Bihar, followed by West Bengal, followed by Kerala, followed by Uttar Pradesh. Now comes the question, why exactly Bihar is so populated? Why UP is so populated? Why West Bengal is so populated, if you ask me? Reason is very simple, because it is plain. Among all the physiographic divisions, if you take it, which region has maximum carrying capacity? Technically, we call them as what? Geodemographic load bearing capacity. Right? Which physiographic division has more capacity to house population and to support the sustenance of the population in terms of agriculture? If you ask me, it is plain. So it is universal that plains will be populated, because among the larger countries of the world, the countries which has more than 1 crore or 10 million plus population, among the larger countries of the world, which is most thickly populated country in the world, if you ask me, answer is Bangladesh. Why Bangladesh? Because the reason, entire Bangladesh is a plain. Except a small Chittagong region, entire Bangladesh is a plain. Fertile plain, the two fertile plain. Right? So any plains you take it, as I said, the carrying capacity of the land will be what? Highest. Okay. So having said this, my friends, having said this, right, now talking about the classification of the plain, right, how exactly we can classify, as I already said, the plains can be classified as northern plains and the coastal plains. Northern plains, still I can classify based on the rivers that, say, for example, somewhere create the plains as such. Gangetic plains, complete state of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal is Gangetic. Plains of Assam is Brahmaputra plains created by river called as Brahmaputra. And all the plains which is located beyond this Gangetic plains, we call them as what? Trans-Gangetic. Trans-Gangetic plain, again for my somewhere convenience, I'm just classifying them based on the prevailing climate called as arid plains and semi-arid plains. On the other hand, when I talk about coastal plains, I can divide them, classify them as East Coast plains. Bay of Bengal plains, I call them as what? East Coast plains. Plains along the Arabian seaside, I call them as what? West Coast plains. When I talk about East Coast plains, right? Odisha, Utkal plains. Utkal is the older name of Odisha. Even say, for example, national anthem, my dear friends. Odisha is referred as what? Utkal. Right? Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, Dravida, Utkal, Banga. Am I right? Utkal is what? Odisha. See, national anthem is perfectly geographic in orientation. And I appreciate that, say, for example, the order what exactly is followed. It's a beautiful order, right? If you start somewhere locating it, the continuation you'll be finding it. Okay. Whatever it is the case, somewhere I'm just trying to say that Utkal is the older name for what? Odisha. Kalinga, Utkal, etc. Northern Sirkar Plains, Andhra Pradesh, and Coromandel Plains of what? Then when I talk about West Coast Plains, we have plains of Kerala, Malabar Plains. Maharashtra, Goa, and Karnataka put together, we call them as Konkan Plains. And the plains of Gujarat, you call them as what? Gujarat Plain itself. Okay? Right. So all these plains, one by one, we have to take it and we have to discuss in detail. Right? Right, my friends. First, let me start with arid plains. This arid plains, Trans-Gangetic plain, completely state of Rajasthan, particularly Western Rajasthan. My friends, this is a place where I have a desert. This desert, you call them as what? Thar desert. What type of desert is Thar desert? If you ask me, tropical desert. Right? And see, based on the prevailing temperature, I can call them as what? Tropical desert. But I can also classify them based on the texture. Right? If that is the case, I can call them as what? Sandy desert, rocky desert, stony desert. Right? You call them as what? When I talk about sandy desert, we call them as what? Erg desert, my dear friends. We call them as what? Erg desert. So deserts can also be classified as sandy, stony, and rocky. In that way, Thar desert is a sandy desert. Technically, we call them as what? Erg desert. And this sandy desert, my dear friends, locally in Rajasthan, you call them as what? Marusthali or Marusthal. You call them as what? Marusthali or Marusthal. Right. The finest example, we have this Sam desert, where we have this desert national park itself located. And any sandy desert you take it, they are known for shifting sand When the direction of the wind changing, what happens? This dune, small mountain-like structure will be there. They'll be keep shifting from what place to place. And these shifting sand dunes, you call them as what? Daryans. You call them as what? Daryans, my dear friends. Okay. And some of the lakes also, salt lakes also you have in this region. For example, of course, you have the most saline water body in India called as Sambar Lake, right? Didwana, Kachman, etc. are the other salt lakes of this region. Because it's in dry locations, you have plenty of salt lake because evaporation is more dominant. And what is very interesting, see, normally we have a feeling that desert means vegetation is very less. Desert means we have a perception that desert soils are infertile. But interestingly, desert do have fertile soils. And these fertile soils, we call them as what? Bagar. Right? So fertile soils of arid location, we call them as what? Bagar, my dear friends. In that way, we do have bagars like Rajasthan Bagar, facilitated by river Luni. And we have, say, for example, Bhiwani Bagar, facilitated by river Ghagar. See, Bhiwani Bagar is more part of Haryana. Rajasthan Bagar is more part of Rajasthan itself. Bagar is nothing but what? Fertile soils of arid location. See, fertility depends on the humus content and the mineral content. Obviously, I understand that being a desert, humus content will be less, but mineral content can be more. But what brings that mineral content is some agent of gradation. That universal agent of gradation will be river, right? So Luni is the one which results in the creation of Rajasthan Bagar, and Ghagar is a river which creates what? This Bhiwani Bagar. And let me tell you, my dear friends, when talk about, say, for example, this soil of Rajasthan, particularly Western Rajasthan, you would have heard about this Indira Gandhi River Water Canal. When Indira Gandhi River Water Canal was somewhere brought water to the Western Rajasthan, it changed the agricultural pattern of Rajasthan. Even today, Rajasthan is one of the very important, say, for example, Rabi crop producer. Kharif crop, okay, it is not possible, right? But Rabi crop, if I just talk about it, Rajasthan is one of the, say, for example, the larger contributor because soil is fertile. What was restricting the vegetation in this Western Rajasthan, particularly, is not the fertility of the soil, but non availability of the water. Okay, right. Right, my friends. Now, some of the questions also I have inserted. Number one, apart from this arid plains, if I'm just moving on to the semi-arid plains. See, semi-arid plains, what I'm just somewhere mentioning here is Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, and Eastern Rajasthan, based on prevailing climate. Ministry of Agriculture calls the same as Yamuna Satluj plains because it is located between Satluj and Yamuna. And my dear friends, this semi-arid plains, right? Particularly, okay, forget about Haryana, Delhi, and Eastern Rajasthan. If I just take Punjab for that case, if I'm taking Punjab for that case, my dear friends, Punjab, a kind of an oxymoron you find it. I cannot call it as an oxymoron, but a kind of an irony. What is this irony? Given the climatic condition, it is semi-arid. Semi-arid means common man's understanding it is dry. But just now we said entire India, which state has more agricultural productivity, that is more production per unit area of land, if you ask me, it is Punjab. Right? One of the most successful states of green revolution is Punjab. Correct. In that way, how come the question, right? Given climatic condition is dry, but Punjab is known for agricultural productivity. How it is even possible? Because the name itself says what? Punjab. Right? The land of five rivers. I mean, or I can say, for example, this is a region where I have five doabs. Land of five rivers, my dear friends. Okay. Land of five rivers. In that way, you may wonder, where are these five rivers? Actually, it is not even five rivers, six rivers. Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Bias, and Satluj. Right? All Indus along with its tributaries. Now you may wonder, what is this? Where Indus is flowing in Punjab, where Jhelum is flowing in Punjab, where Chenab is flowing in Punjab. Simple, my dear friends. When talk about Punjab, when the name Punjab was kept, it was not only Punjab of India, it also includes Punjab of Pakistan. Right? When I simply say Punjab, it was not only Bengal that was partitioned. What exactly Radcliffe line separated is not only Bengal, my dear friends, it is also Punjab. When I talk about Punjab, considerable Punjab is there in what Pakistan. If I just include both the Punjabs of India and Pakistan, yes, all these rivers flows there. We have Indus, we have Jhelum, we have Chenab, Ravi, Bias, and Satluj. And see, again this year, Indus, along with its tributaries, I feel that this is important because somewhere we are talking about the possible amendment of this Indus Water Treaty of 1960. Okay, right, my dear friends. And see, this region also has plenty of doabs. Name itself says doab, the region between two rivers, right? For example, we have two very important doabs here, Bari doab and Bist doab. Name itself says between which two rivers. Bari means between Bias and Ravi. And when I talk about Bist, my dear friends, it is between Bias and Satluj. Okay. So we do have two very important doabs. Any doab you take it, doab will be a fertile region because the alluvium will be deposited by both the rivers. Correct. Right. Now, similarly, my dear friends, any alluvial plains you take it, these alluvial plains, I can classify them as new alluvial plains or new alluvial soil and old alluvial soil, right? New alluvial and old alluvial soil. And this new alluvial soil, my dear friends, generally they are more fertile, right? You call them as what? Kadur. You call them as what? Kadur. Okay, new alluvial soil, you call them as what? Kadur. Whereas when I talk about old alluvial soil, my dear friends, okay, I should put it this way, right? The new alluvial soil, you call them as what? Kadur. Kadur will be more fertile. Whereas when I talk about old alluvial soil, generally they are less infertile. They are called as what? Bangar. Okay, Indian context, you call them as what? Bangar. Okay, maybe it's not much visible, but still, later part also I'll just bring it. But when I talk about Punjab reference, this new alluvial soil is called as Daya, and old alluvial soil is called as what? Wetland. Okay, it is called as Daya and wetland, Punjab. And Punjab also has a kind of an infertile soil called as Kankar. Kankar is more known for calcium nodules rich soil in Punjab. Okay, right. So this saw the facts about Trans-Gangetic Plain. Now coming to the largest plain in India and the most populated plain of the world called as Gangetic Plain. See, Gangetic Plain is formed by Indus along with its tributaries and distributaries, right? So Gangetic Plain is so vast so that we can divide them into Upper Gangetic Plain, Middle Gangetic Plain, and Lower Gangetic Plain. Upper Gangetic Plain almost, say for example, it overlaps with Uttar Pradesh. Mid Gangetic Plains overlaps with Bihar, and Lower Gangetic Plain overlaps with West Bengal. Okay, and some of the left bank and right bank tributaries of this Ganga also I have just added. For example, all G's, Gomati, Ghagara, Gantak, Kosi. These are some of the very important left bank tributaries of Ganga. Whereas Yamuna, Son are very important right bank tributaries of Ganga. See, normally we have an idea that left bank tributaries of Ganga originate from Himalayas, whereas right bank tributaries of Ganga are peninsular rivers. But there is one exception. Yamuna is an exception. Yamuna is the only right bank tributary of Ganga, which is Himalayan in origin. Okay, whatever it is the case. So the very important rivers we have added. And I have also added one of the very important distributaries of Ganga called as Hooghly. Today, West Bengal, we call them as what? Lower Gangetic Plains, I understand. But the plains of West Bengal is not created by Ganga, it is created by what river? Hooghly. Okay, right, my dear friends. Now, I have also added some of the tributaries of this distributary called as Ajay and Damodar. Right? And my dear friends, because this plains is so vast, already we have divided them into what? Upper, mid, and lower Gangetic plains based on the course of the river. And when I talk about upper Gangetic plain, that is Uttar Pradesh, we have two unequal plains. Towards the western side, I have a small plains, elevated plains, but a fertile plains called as Rohilkhand plains. Sometimes Rohilkhand plains is also called as what? Yamuna Ganga Doab. Because it largely lies between Yamuna and Ganga. Right? Very fertile. Very, very fertile. Slightly elevated. Once you see the, at least you'll be finding that Rohilkhand plains is elevated. On the eastern side, you have a larger plains, slightly less in fertility. You call it as what? Awadh plains. See, I'm not saying Awadh is infertile. I'm saying Awadh is comparatively less in fertility. Okay. Then when I talk about Bihar, my dear friends, at least Bihar, you'll be finding Ganga separates Bihar into two almost equal halves. The northern plains, you call them as what? Mithila plains, and southern plains, you call them as what? Magad plains. And West Bengal plains, we call them as what? Rar plains, my dear friends. We call them as what? Rar plains. So somewhere, I understand, say for example, these are some of the plains which is part and parcel of what? This Gangetic plain. Plains. And my dear friends, Gangetic Plains, particularly Magad Plains, is also known for some of the permanent freshwater lakes, where exactly the water will be retained in the lakes almost on a perennial basis, and locally we call them as what? Chores or kavartals. And what is the reason for having the permanent freshwater lake in this region? If you ask me, it is all about the subsurface extension of this Hazaribagh plateau, my dear friends. Okay, right, fine. So some basic facts about this Gangetic Plains also we have taken it. Now, the last northern plains of India called as Brahmaputra Plains, Assam, completely confined to the state of Assam. Right. Now, what I have just given, I have just tried adding some of the very important tributaries of Brahmaputra. And see, Brahmaputra do not take the same name in different countries. And forget about the country, even in India, it do not take the same name in different states. For example, China, you call them as Sang. But as and when this river enters India, in the state of Arunachal Pradesh, you call them as what? Dihang. Only in Assam, you call them as what? Brahmaputra. And as and when it enters Bangladesh, it takes the name called as Jamuna. See, one river, plenty of names. Sangpo, China, Dihang, Arunachal Pradesh, Brahmaputra, Assam, Jamuna, say for example, Bangladesh. And see, further also it takes one more name. At one point of time, it becomes what? Meghna. It becomes Meghna. When Jamuna and Padma, Ganga and Bangladesh, you call them as what? Padma. When they confluence with each other, it becomes what? Meghna. Okay, whatever it is the case. I've also included some of the tributaries of these rivers. Where exactly this Brahmaputra? Brahmaputra is regarded as the broadest river in India, accepted. Somewhere exaggeration, I said, not an exaggeration, based on some specific facts. The distance between two banks of Brahmaputra is more than the distance between India and Sri Lanka. See, for that statement, I am taking the maximum distance between two banks of Brahmaputra and minimum distance between India and Sri Lanka. Distance between Dhanushkodi and Talaimannar, I am just taking it, right? It is only 16 kilometers. But two banks of Brahmaputra, the maximum difference is what? Distance is 18 kilometers. You call them as a moving ocean. That broad it is. But where exactly the broadest profile of Brahmaputra starts? When these three rivers confluence with each other. That is Dihang, Dibang and Logit. When it confluence with each other, the broadest profile of Brahmaputra starts. Okay. Along the course, you also find the world's largest riverine island called as Majuli Island. Okay. You call them as what? Majuli Island. Where Subansiri and Disang as a river will be confluencing. Other rivers also I have just given it. So the very important rivers like Kameng, Manas and Teesta also we have given it. And my dear friends, this plain is highly prone to flood, right? Known for hot and humid climatic condition existing throughout the year. Known for the presence of evergreen forest. But interestingly, if you ask me, what is about the fertility of the soil? Interestingly, the soil is infertile, right? This type of soil is known as laterite soil. Then comes the question, how come you have evergreen forest? Again, the point of clarification. What determines the density of vegetation is not the fertility of the soil. It is the availability of sunlight and water, 1 and 2. Apart from that, I can add what? Soil. Because I do not have vegetation doesn't mean that it is infertile soil, like Bagar we said. Because I have a thick vegetation does not mean that this soil is what? Fertile, like the laterite soil what we have. Okay, right, my dear friends. It's all about the northern plains of India. Coastal plains, the number of facts are not so great. Utkal plains largely confined to the state of Odisha. Some of the rivers which forms the Utkal plains, I have just somewhere ordered north to south. Subarnareka, Brahmani and Mahanadi. And this is the region where I have the largest lake in India. This lake you call them as what? Chilka or sometimes called as Chilika Lake, right? And Chilika Lake is a lagoon, my dear friends. See, when I talk about lagoon, what exactly is a lagoon? Any lake that is connected to the sea, which has a direct opening into the sea, you call them as what? You call them as what? Okay. Then I have Northern Sirkar plains. Some of the rivers which facilitates the formation of the Northern Sirkars, I can take it as what? Right, rivers like Vamsadhara, rivers like Godavari, rivers like Krishna, rivers like Pennaru. See, Pennaru, I can take it part of Coromandel Plains as well as the part of Northern Sirkars. But only thing is that since Northern Sirkars I am somewhere overlapping with Andhra Pradesh, Pennaru I am taking it with what? Northern Sirkar Plains itself. Right? In that way, When talk about some of the lakes, some of the very famous lakes what I have in this region, my dear friends, you have lakes like Kolleru and Pulikat Lake. Kolleru is a freshwater lake, whereas Pulikat Lake is a lagoon. Pulikat Lake is located in such a way that part of this lake is there in Tamil Nadu and most of the lake is what? There in Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Then Tamil Nadu, you have the presence of Coromandel Plains. And when I talk about Coromandel Plains, some of the rivers which facilitates the formation of Coromandel Plains or rivers like Palar, rivers like Kaveri, and rivers like Vaigi. And in this region, my dear friends, you do have the, say for example, the creation of an island called as Pamban Island. Very technically, we call them as what? Tumbol. Islands which is created by sea wave deposition. You call them as Tumbolo. And to be very precise, these islands, we call them as what? Aggradational island. Deposition as a process creating an island, you call them as what? Tumbolo or aggradational island. Rameshwaram, Dhanushkodi, all these are classical examples of these islands. Okay. And finally, my dear friends, if you are there in the west coast, first let me talk about the Malabar coast. See, Malabar coast, normally this Malabar plains, Kerala, we call them as stable plains. What is stable plains? Normally, we say that the western side of Western Ghats or west coast of India is a coastline of submergence, whereas east coast of India is a coastline of emergence. Correct. Now, west coast is a coastline of submergence, that I agreed, but Malabar plains did not experience this subsidence. That's the reason we say neither it is submergence nor it is emergence. And my dear friends, Malabar plains has lot many number of backwater lakes. Locally, we call them as what? Kayal. Right? Kayal. Plenty of kayals we have, among them one of the famous kayals, right? Or backwater lakes, you call them as what? Vembanad Lake and Astamudi Lake. Plenty of them are. And point to be noted, my dear friends, Malabar Plains is that plains where I have the presence of this very important location called as Kuttanad. Kuttanad, name itself says what? Kuttanad. I mean, let's see here. What is the most elevated point in India? Which is the highest peak point in India? We know the answer, it is K2. On the other hand, if I am asking you which is the lowest point in India, it is Kuttanad. The height of Kuttanad is somewhere approximately minus 3 meters below mean sea level. Nearly it is 10 feet, located 10 feet below the mean sea level, but still not inundated by water. So highest point is K2. The lowest point is Kuttanad. And Kuttanad is located where? Kerala, Malabar Plains. Okay. Right, my dear friends. Then say for example, if I just talk about Konkan Plains. The combined state of Karnataka, Goa and Maharashtra, collectively we have what? Konkan Plains. And let me tell you, my dear friends, this plain is the narrowest plain in India. Average width of this plain is only somewhere around 50 kilometers. And it is the coarsest plain. See, what determines the texture of soil is the length of the river. The length of the river is more, it becomes finer, 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 and finer. It becomes more clean. The length of the river is less, the texture of soil will be very coarse. And of course, I understand Konkan Plain is a coastline of what? Submergence. Entire west coast is a coastline of submergence, but Konkan Plains is a classical example of submergence. And the last plains, Gujarat Plains, some of the rivers which has facilitated the formation of Gujarat Plains, rivers like Sabarmati, Mahi, Narmada, and Tapi. Gujarat has plenty of creeks. I know the fact that Gujarat coast is the longest or the lengthiest coastline in entire India. But still, what exactly facilitate that longer coastline is the presence of Gulf and Peninsula. Apart from that, the presence of creeks and estuary also extends the length of the coastline. So the very important creeks we have, Sar Creek, the westernmost point in India, Sar Creek, very important, right? In Rann of Kutch region or Kutch Peninsular region, we also have Kori Creek and Godia Creek. These are some of the creeks what you find it in what? This Kutch Peninsula. And my dear friends, this Kutch Peninsula also has Rann of Kutch and Little Rann. They are marshlands and salt marsh. And if you ask me what exactly is the meaning of Rann, Rann, say for example, means desert. So it also gives you an idea. When I talk about deserts, my dear friends, tropical deserts or warm deserts, they are not only confined to Western Rajasthan. Deserts are also confined to what? Rann of Kutch regions of Gujarat. So this is all about the plains of India. And finally, coming to the last topic of the day and last topic of physiographic divisions of India, it is called as islands. See, what is an island? Any place which is all side surrounded by water, I call them as what? Island. Right? And talk about, say, for example, different types of island, my dear friends. We have continental island. Land eventually becoming an island, continental island. Coral reef becoming an island, you call them as what? Coral island, or you call them as what? Atolls. Volcano resulting in the formation of islands, volcanic islands. Right? On the other hand, my dear friends, deposition creating an island, you call them as what? Depositional island, or you call them as what? Aggradational island. Okay. See here, all types of islands we have. And if you ask me, India, how many islands we have? Official record says, as of now, there are about 1,382 islands. This is the official record. Number of islands may change every now and then. Last year, my dear friends, even this information will be there in, say, for example, net. Last year, according to the official data, it is 1,206 islands. Before that, it was 1,197 islands. Every time you see that the number of islands are growing. See, islands are not growing. Maybe existing island can get submerged, new islands can get formed, but not certainly at this, say for example, pace. Only thing is that some of the islands reclassification it has changed. Even say for example, what you see here, technically we call them as what? Rocky outcrop. Forget about this greater image, right? Somewhere if I'm just surrounding of this image, you call them as a rocky outcrop. See, until recently we don't consider this rocky outcrop as an island. But very recently, Andaman particularly has increased the number of islands. Even the rocky outcrops are called as what? Islands. Because see, islands are very important. Island gives you an avenue of having more exclusive economic zone in the ocean. My dear friends, see for example, if I have one small island in the middle of the ocean, let this island itself be insignificant in the nature. But the small island in the middle of the ocean can give me 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone. How many direction if you ask me? All 360 degree. All 360 degree. It means one small island in the middle of the ocean can contribute more than 4 lakh square kilometer of an area. Right? It can contribute more than 4 lakh square kilometer of an area when it comes to occupancy in the ocean. Strategically, islands are very, very important. Right? Having said that, my dear friends, just for our understanding or the simplicity, we can classify these Indian islands as oceanic islands and others. Oceanic islands like Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, some of the nearshore islands, and inland islands. Okay. So, quick facts about these islands. I'll start with Andaman. See, every time I call them as what? Andaman and Nicobar Islands. It means the northern group of islands, we call them as what? Andaman group. And southern group of islands, we call them as what? Nicobar group. And both Andaman and Nicobar is separated by this water body called as what? 10-degree channel. 10-degree channel. And northern group, my difference. All types of islands are there. Andaman, you take it, say for example, Andaman itself is what? Majorly a continental island. Right? It is nothing but what? A fold mountain. It is the indirect extension of Himalayas and the direct extension of what? Arakanayoma mountains. Arakanayoma mountain is nothing but what? Fold mountains. That's the reason, my dear friends, Andaman and Nicobar Island, you also have a peak called a Saddle Peak. Saddle Peak is the highest peak of what? Andaman. Okay. And all Andaman, you take it, my dear friends, totally there are 836 islands are there in Andaman. 836 islands. Last year information, again, this information will be there in net if you search it. Right. According to the last year information, it is only 570. All of a sudden, how these many islands got increased? Reclassification. Even the rocky outcrops are considered as what? Islands. Right. So official record, Andaman official website says, right, including rocky outcrops, there are somewhere around 836 islands. Okay. 836 islands are there. See, normally I know the Gujarat has the lengthiest coastline. Among the states, if I also include Union Territory, then the lengthiest coastline is with Andaman and Nicobar Islands, not even Gujarat. Now, the northern group, I said Andaman, and southern group, you call them as what? Nicobar group, separated by 10-degree channel. And if you're there in northern groups, my dear friends, you have 4 very important islands: North Andaman, Middle Andaman, South Andaman, and Little Andaman. And the South Andaman and Little Andaman, again, it is separated by one very important water body called as what? Duncan Passage. You call them as what? Duncan Passage. Right? Maybe you can remember this Duncan Passage also. Right? And when I talk about Nicobar Islands, my dear friends, among them, the largest group is Great Nicobar. And this Great Nicobar is the southernmost island of Andaman, and it is also the southernmost point of India, right? We have, say, for example, the Indra Point, my dear friends. Indra Point is regarded as the southernmost point of India, somewhere around the 6 degree and 45 minutes north. Indra Point. Okay, right. Then coming to Lakshadweep. Lakshadweep is a group of 36 islands. Completely, it is an atoll. Atoll in the sense they are completely coral islands. 36 islands are there. These 36 islands put together contribute only 32 square kilometer of an area, right? It means given this is the, say, for example, the smallest political unit you have. See, as of today, India has 28 states and 8 union territories, my dear friends. Totally, we have 36 political units. Out of this 36 political units, which is the smallest political unit? It is Lakshadweep. Which is the smallest state, if you're asking me, it is Goa. Correct? By, say, for example, the area if I'm just talking about. Okay. See, on an average, every island has less than 1 square kilometer on an average. Okay. So this Lakshadweep, my dear friends, 36 atolls are there, 36 islands are there. It can be divided into 3 groups. The northern group, you call them as Amindivi groups. The central groups, you call them as what? Kannanur group. And the southern isolated island, you call them as what? Minicoy Islands. Okay. And Kannanur group is very important because the capital, Kavaratti, is located where? Kannanur. The place where you have this airport of Lakshadweep called as Agathi Island, right? Agathi is located in Kannanur group. As I already said, Kavaratti, the capital Kavaratti is located in what? Kannanur group. And the largest island called as Androt Island, my dear friends. Androt. Again, Androt Island is located in what? The Kannanur group. So Kannanur group is very, very important. Okay. And say, for example, like 10-degree channel, what you have here is what? 9-degree channel and 8-degree channel. 8-degree channel is not visible here, but I'll include here 8-degree channel. 8-degree channel is the one which separates Minicoy Islands and Maldives. Or I can say Lakshadweep and Maldives. Or I can say India and Maldives also. Okay. So this 8-degree channel is also very, very important. Okay. What is 10-degree channel is Andaman. What is 9-degree and 8-degree channel is what? Lakshadweep. But 8-degree is what? Very, very important. Okay. Right, my dear friends. So Lakshadweep is done. Andaman is done superficially. Right. Now talking about some of the very important near-shore islands. Some of the very important, only the prominent names I'm taking it. Diu. Diu itself is a political unit off the coast of Gujarat, a continental island. Similarly, my dear friends, when I talk about Wellington Island, Cochin, very near to this Vembanad Lake, the opening up of this Vembanad Lake, we have this Wellington Lake. What is so important about this Vembanad Lake, if you ask me? Because, my dear friend, this is the largest artificial island in India. This is the largest man-made island in India. And when I talk about, say, for example, Tamil Nadu, we have this Pamban Island. It is an example of aggradational island. And what was there in news recently, my dear friends, you would have seen about something called as Van Tidu. Right? Either it is written as VAAN or you call them as what? VANN. Both the spellings, right? You come across Van Tidu or Van Island. Why exactly this island, right? You're there in Tamil Nadu, Gulf of Mannar. Gulf of Mannar. Recently, it was there in news because this island was almost submerged. Near completely, it got submerged, right? By, say, for example, planting the artificial coral reef, this island was again, say, for example, somewhere reclaimed, right? So, one of the reclaimed island we have in the name of what? Van Island. With the help of IIT Madras, this reclamation process was actually done. So, very recently, it was there in news. One complete article was there in, say, for example, Hindu, right, which was covering this sinking islands of India. Van Island was one of the islands which was referred there. So kindly noted, Van Island of Gulf of Mannar is also very important, right? Then Sriharikota. We talked about Pulikat Lake, right? Along the banks of Pulikat Lake, we have the Sriharikota, right, where you have this launching pad of India, right? Politically, Sriharikota is part of Andhra Pradesh. Then every time in news, my dear friends, whenever, say, for example, a missile is tested, you will be coming across this island called as what? APJ Abdul Kalam Island, Odisha. The old name, you call them as what? Wheeler's Island, right? Very near to this Chandipur beach, very near to this Bhitarkanika National Park, you have this APJ Abdul Kalam Island. Then we have Sagar or Ganga Sagar Island in West Bengal, kind of aggradational island, the deltaic region of the Gangetic Delta, you have this island. And very important, New Moor Island, my dear friends. See, this island was a disputed island between India and Bangladesh. But today we don't have this dispute because this island itself is not there. Completely it got submerged. Tsunami has partially submerged it. Global warming and the increase in the mean sea level has further submerged it. Okay. But still in maps you'll be finding this New More Island. But I used to call this island as No More Island. Okay. Okay. Whatever it is the case, right? These are some of the islands what somewhere I have to focus. Near shore islands. And when I talk about inland island, my dear friends, what is this inland island? Those islands which is there within the land. N number of islands are there. Among them, I am taking only what? The most important islands of that case. In that regard, my dear friends, I am taking only two islands for that case. One is Majuli Island, Assam, Umananda Island, Assam. Both are located along the course of Brahmaputra. But what is very important, Majuli Island is regarded as the largest river island in the world. Right? Largest river island in the world. And Umananda Island is regarded as the smallest inhabited island in the world. They call it as smallest river island in the world. That is accepted. But when I talk about smallest, right, that classification comes with inhabitation. Right. Classification comes with inhabitation as such. Okay. So both the largest riverine island in the world as well as the smallest river island in the world, both are located along this river Brahmaputra itself. Okay. So right, my dear friends, with this, I'm just coming to an end of this, say for example, this physiographic divisions of India. Right. The rest of it, we'll take it in next class. Okay. Thank you and God bless. Keep studying. Only few days are left. Go for a fast forwarded revision. Even say, for example, this video later, if you're watching it, 1.25x or 1.5x, you can watch it. Right. The class itself is looking like 1.5x. Okay, whatever it is the case, right? Keep studying. Keep your motivation level always high. See, confidence itself will give you, say, for example, 2 or 3 questions more. So don't almost say, for example, lose your confidence. Confidence is your best friend, what you can carry till your examination. Wishing you all the best. Thank you and God bless.